Buenas, Hafide, and good evening. This oversight hearing is conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts and is hereby called to order at 5:44 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on September 24, 2024, with the second notice being provided on September 29, 2024. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and on the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This afternoon, the committee is holding an oversight hearing to discuss the Guam Department of Education with the following items on the agenda: DPHSS compliance, emergency declaration spending, school aid and one-to-one aid shortage, teacher shortage, AC update, textbook survey and disposal. And again, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment before we close the hearing. I am Senator Chris Barnett. Good evening. I'd like to also welcome our GDOE management team here, and at this time I'd like to go over the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislatura en Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. Again, this is our monthly Guam Department of Education oversight hearing. There was a law that a bill that the body passed that was subsequently signed into law that moved the compliance timeline from the beginning of last school year to the start of this school year. And in that law, there was also a requirement, a mandate from my colleagues that we hold monthly oversight hearings until every school has received a sanitary permit. And as we start this hearing tonight, it's my understanding that there are 2 schools remaining to be inspected by public health. Mr. Superintendent, before we get into your presentation, anybody who wishes to provide testimony tonight is going to be sworn in by our Sergeant at Arms. So again, anyone who wishes to speak or is going to speak before the committee, please rise and be sworn in by our Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Ed Pakaigui.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you will affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Sidus Masi, Sarge. Well, Soup, before we get into your testimony, I've just got a lot of stakeholders from the Southern High community who are awaiting any type of announcement. And as you know, the schools had a little bit of trouble reaching compliance. And I've heard just through my sources that we're pending an official announcement. So I'm just wondering if there's anything you can say on the record so that we can inform our Southern High School community, even if you have to hint.
At this point, we do not have an official decision from the Department of Health. The inspection is complete. They've been working on the report, but until they release that, we don't have an answer. I would like to have one tonight, but what I like and what I get sometimes are not the same thing.
Right, right. And so I'll just say for the record that I've received indications that it's a favorable result. But again, we're just going to wait for the official announcement. I'm not sure what timeline public health is on relative to announcing when schools pass, but Mr. Soup, when was the inspection for Southern High completed?
It was completed Friday afternoon last week.
Okay.
Generally speaking, up until about the close of business, like if I were to get that information right now, we would activate for Thursday for the kids to go back to school because it takes the day to stand up transportation, right, food service, and all of those logistical supports.
Okay. Well, I just want to
do that as soon as we get the word.
Right. So thank you again to you and your team. I know the facilities and maintenance guys, the Southern High School staff, and a tremendous amount of volunteers to include the school opening readiness team for all their assistance. And most especially, I want to thank the parents and the students for their sacrifice at Southern High during this time. I mean, it's been a rough ride with online learning, and every day I get messages from You know, interestingly, most of these messages are coming from students, and they just want to get back into the home of the Dolphins. So as soon as you know, let me know, and I'll tell the whole island.
And I've even had some email from the students, and I absolutely agree with them. I want to get them back as fast as I can. At the same time, we want to be sure they're safe.
Thank you. Okay, so you can go ahead and start with your presentation as always. To the people of Guam, we set these agenda items, and then the superintendent will provide a report based on all the items on the agenda, and then after that report, usually we ask the questions, unless there's something juicy in the report. But go ahead, superintendent.
Okay, well, we'll start to the PowerPoint, and we'll skip all of that hello, I'm here stuff. There we go. Okay, the first question that we had to answer was compliance with inspections. You have the full handout in front of you, but the one on the screen is, you see the ones that are highlighted in blue. The first two for October 2nd, that would be today, are the last two inspections that we need to do, which are in Arahan Middle and Chief Brody, and they'll start tomorrow. I would anticipate that those will take just one day, and then we should have the results within the week. The next four are re-inspections from schools that were inspected last fall at this time. So now we're starting into the cycle of re-inspecting schools that already have a certificate. So in the interest of saving another hearing, we're going to check off those last two that will show that all of the schools have been given a health certificate. The column over on the right, sanitary permit issue renewal date. The renewal date is driven by the date that the certificate was issued, not the date it was inspected. So when we get the invoicing and the billing from the Department of Health, then we pay for those inspections, and that's the effective date. But what we're doing is we're starting into a cycle of monthly re-inspections, so many of these are going to be inspected before the due date, so that we get onto a cycle of having 2 or 3 a month, year-round. And if we can set it up properly, I would like to have all of those finished in June every year, and we'll start in September and go September to June. As we've talked before, I would like to, if we can, look at the legislative side of this and make that a 2-year cycle rather than a 1-year cycle, because of the logistics of doing it, because you figure 40 campuses, to get all of them done in a school year, you've got to do 2 or 3 a month. And in the re-inspection process, one of the things that's different than the initial is that we have to, any place that there was a demerit in the initial, we have to go back and address it. So we go line by line. And sometimes that's a little bit tedious. And especially if we had a variance, we have to show what we did to work through the mitigation of that variance. So the next 2 pages show all of the schools and all of the dates that those inspections right now come up in terms of the expiration of their certificate, but we'll get them inspected before they expire. We don't want to ever go back to this again, the way we've had to the last 2 years. So as we can see, I have a few B's and an A.
Yeah.
And our goal is to get more B's and more A's. It's kind of like trying to graduate with a good GPA, and so we're working that. But the compliance piece, we work very closely with the Department of Public Health. They've been very helpful in this process. They're very professional about how they work. The work that we've had to do in this opening of school, you know, we were down to those schools that we classified as level 3 initiative. The amount of money and resources and man hours that we've put into the last half a dozen schools has been immense. In Arahan Middle School, I don't even know the clock hours. It's huge. So that anyway, that inspection we expect that they will go well. There is still more work to do, as you'll see too when we come to another part of the presentation. So, the next item, there we go, we're emergency declaration spending. You recall that at the beginning of August, the board declared an emergency for the purposes of repairing and reopening schools.
Soup, if I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
Since there's just a couple of us in there, and I want to recognize our minority leader, Senator Frank Blas Jr. and Senator Joanne Brown. I guess we'll just go topic by topic and then ask the questions as we go.
Okay.
So I did want to, because you, in the media, you floated the idea of doing the inspections every 2 years, which, you know, I'm not ready to visit only because, you know, I prefer that we complete the cycle. And then I'm thinking, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that the re-inspections of schools that are already permitted, in my mind, if we're doing the routine maintenance, shouldn't be as difficult as, let's say, inspecting a school like GW, which hasn't been physically inspected since 2013. And then I'm also aware of some efforts, as you are, to I don't want to say farm out, but just figure out a better way to approach the maintenance of the school facilities, and I'm sure you're aware of that too. So I think there are different things in play that we need to see through, and then take a look at, you know, where we are, and I think that's prudent.
Well, I'm not trying to not do this work. What I was looking at is the manpower requirements for what we have. And like I said before, when we get into those schools that were level 2 and level 3, there's still more work to be done. And we're going to continue to do it, but we're also looking at reconfiguring our maintenance force, positioning them in different places around the island so that they can do routine things more often. And if we can make the budget work out.
Working on it.
Yeah, I know. Then I can also add staff to that particular part of the organization so that we're better manned to do the work. But like I said, tomorrow the last 2 are done, and we're moving into the re-inspection cycle that will continue. And so I've instructed my staff to build up a schedule so that we are done in the month of June, early July at the latest, and then we'll start over again in September.
Right. Chief Brody, so I just wanted to talk about this on the record because I didn't get the opportunity to in the last hearing, but we know that Chief Brody and Juan Guerrero are on a shared campus, meaning that both schools attend classes at the Juan Guerrero facility, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so I know that you're saying that Chief Brody's inspection will start tomorrow, but are you aware of concerns from the Chief Brody population just about the conditions of the classrooms that they're occupying? And I was also I was shocked to find that the school is operating with a D rating, and I'll just provide the background is basically, from my understanding, the school is inspected, and during that inspection, several classrooms were condemned, meaning cordoned off with the yellow tape. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point. And because of that, as you know, public health doesn't inspect those rooms. But then I was later told by employees of Chief Brody that when Chief Brody moved into the school, these condemned classes were opened. Students were allowed to go into these classes. Teachers are using these classes, teachers from Chief Brody. And then public health got a tip that basically said, hey, these guys are in these classrooms that you guys didn't inspect. And so this is where it gets a little foggy for me, but it's my understanding that public health then subsequently replaced Juan Guerrero C inspection rating with a letter grade of D, but somehow the demerits remain at the C level. And so I'd gotten emails from a couple teachers and even a student who wanted me to ask on the record, how is it that the Guam Department of Education is able to operate a school with a D rating when, for example, Southern High had a D rating and they were, you know, obviously they're not even open yet. So if you could just, what's your understanding of that situation?
My understanding is that we're operating on the numerical score, and the issue was that the condemned that area was not the classrooms themselves, but the approach to them and the walkway. And we have since funded the replacement of the canopy to those classrooms so that we could accommodate the issue. That brings us to another discussion, and we're going to be having more of it in the community as we look at, and just as an aside, as we look at the reality of having to adjust our capacity based on budget and facilities. We have a school that can accommodate that number of students that are actually closer to their home. So we take a really close look at that. But that work in the community is about to start in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be working through that through the fall. And the board will make decisions about not only that particular attendance zone, but others as well.
Right, and I mean, I get it, and I understand that Chief Brody is one of these schools that's kind of in that zone where there's been discussion about turning it into a middle school, et cetera, but I did want to share just a little bit of these concerns from the Chief Brody staff. Initially, Juan and Guerrero claimed to be able to house our students and teachers whilst providing the necessary materials and equipment we need as teachers to teach. However, that could not be farther from the truth. Juan and Guerrero's had to open up condemned rooms to our teachers because they were placed in storage rooms that could not reasonably accommodate class sizes past 5 students. Both teachers who were placed into these storage rooms have class sizes larger than 5. And I know that because of the, I got these letters September 15th, and I'm hoping, because I spoke to you about it, that there were some improvements made at Juan and Guerrero?
Those have been corrected.
Okay. And so now we're looking at Chief Brody being inspected starting tomorrow. But again, I just did want to share these concerns on the record, so thank you.
Okay.
All right. Senator Blas, did you have any questions on public health compliance?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Mr. Dr. Swanson and the GDOE crew here. Thank you very much for being here. Is there a difference between how the schools were inspected initially as compared to how they're inspected today?
The inspection process
Right.
at the in the initial inspection is somewhat different than the re-inspection.
No, I'm talking about the regular inspections. Have they differed from the time your schools were initially inspected last year?
Over the course of the last year, have they changed?
Have they changed the initial inspection process?
Would you like to speak to that? Either one. My guys that are in this every day up to their knees can speak directly to it.
Yes, Senator Blas. Chris Anderson, Administrator for Student Support Services Division. No, to my knowledge, there's no difference in the process that public health uses for the inspections.
That's kind of interesting because I've seen some photographs of, in one case, bathroom sinks on the floor in the bathrooms, and yet they passed. Yet, when you had your schools initially inspected, they basically went under every nook and cranny, and something like that would not have passed inspection. Yet, this particular school, passed inspection.
Are you
Photograph came from a teacher. Don't worry, it's not from Chief Brody. Don't worry about it, guys. I mean, Attica. It's not from Attica.
Are you at liberty to share, Senator, which school you're referencing?
It's up north.
And my experience with public health has been they're quite stringent when they do their inspections, and to my knowledge, they haven't changed the level of scrutiny that they apply when they come in and do their inspections.
I guess I bring this up because obviously there was a lot of disappointment, in many of the, not just the faculty, but the parents as well, of schools initially not passing inspection, yet schools that are now being inspected are allowed, I guess leeway, if not being able to go ahead and continue to operate with the same kind of standards or the same rules, if you will, rules of engagement, if you will, for some of the schools that were initially closed because they couldn't pass the inspections. And it brings to light, the concern that if there was a change in the procedures of the initial inspections, obviously we can't turn back time. We're talking about a lot of lost days, for instruction time. I'm glad that if there was a kink in it or, they made some modifications, that's fine, but my concern is are we having schools pass inspections just for the sake of making sure that we can open up the school despite the demerits that they have?
May I answer?
Sure.
Okay, so the inspections are actually a lot harder than they were in the very beginning. I've been at almost every single inspection. We do have this thing called COS's, correction on the spot, where public health comes in. If we're working on something, they'll mark it down, and we have a certain amount of time to get it in, like the sinks. That was either at Finnegan or DL Paris, because I was at both, and we had sinks on the floor during the initial inspection. The DPHSS will say, okay, here you go, this is as far as we're going, here's your demerits on the first day, and say you have this amount of time to fix it. They come back the next day. If it's not fixed or corrected on the spot, then that's when they demerit us. They work with us, but some inspections will take a day, some inspections will take 2-3 days. So, and if it's the two northern schools, because this even happened at Southern High, we had bathroom stalls still on the floor where they were inspecting on the first day. We had to stand them up and addressed them, and all the other vents, dirty vents. If they point it out, we fix it on the spot. But I don't think it got easier. I'm thinking it's harder now. I mean, they're really holding our feet to the fire on everything. So, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean,
And then I appreciate it. It's a good thing. Again, not against GDOE, okay? I know you guys are doing your best in being able to do things. Now, and quite honestly, this fix on the spot business, that didn't occur, quite honestly, if I remember correctly, in your initial inspections.
right.
So if that is a new process that's in, kudos to whoever came up with that plan. I mean, just,
No, just kidding.
okay. And so that's the thing that I just want to make sure that if it's fixed on the spot and we go back and we do these things, okay, then I just don't want us to, at least for GDOE or for DPA, for public health for that matter, to have to skimp on the matter just for the sake of having to pass the inspection. Okay, because I recognize the pressure, the community pressure on being able to open the schools. If it is in fact the result of now a new process of fix on the spot or give you time to fix on the spot, and this helps to speed the process along, but making sure that the schools are safe and sanitary, and great.
So we do have a team of skilled laborers. We do have a team of school aides, myself, the admin, whoever else decides they're going to go on the inspections with the public health inspectors. So when we go into a room and if it's dust, sometimes our facilities guys are going to grab it, sometimes the school aides grab it, sometimes we grab it, whoever. We're all in it to win it. And it's, tomorrow we're going to be at 2 different schools. I mean, it's, you're welcome.
No, I appreciate it. No, because, okay, I do recall the times of right before Atacao, basically failed its inspection. There were a number of demerits that could have been fixed on the spot with the opportunity to be able to say, okay, I'll clean that windowsill or I'll take that mark off the desk so that we can reduce these demerits and work on if there are other things, but so that we can continue, we can pass a school. But
Yeah.
then they were told, no, we're gonna re-inspect you down the road. As opposed to today, you can get that, you can take care of that and within 24, 48 hours get inspected. If that is a new process now, I applaud that.
Yeah, we wrote it
whatever
out,
being-
it's even in an SOP form
Okay,
now.
and that's what I wanted to, is because when you did the comparisons of the two different areas, because I understand that the sink that was on the floor the next day was up,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Before the day was over.
Yeah, before the day was over.
Yes.
However, back in the day, when you first started, the sink's on the floor, I'll come back I'll come back and re-inspect you 6 months from now. In the meantime, you had double sessions, you know, in schools that could have been open in the next week.
It also depends on if it's a ratio, if it met the ratio. So if the sink was on the floor and we made the ratio, we would get hit for equipment not in good condition, which is 4 points. So it kind of like,
Sure.
you know, it's a juggle.
Yeah, okay. Well, like I said, no fault to GDOE. I just wanted to find out, was there a change in the process? And obviously there is now, because now you have fix on the spot, which is a great thing. I don't, you know, again, I don't want to fault you guys. I want to thank you guys for continuing the collaboration and just finding different ways to be able to get things done. So I appreciate that. Okay, that was my only concern. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Senator Masi, Senator Blas. Senator Brown, did you have any questions on the public health compliance?
Not so much, but I just pretty much would like to see moving forward, I'm sure, as a superintendent and key people of his staff. Just want to make sure this becomes a normal process of the school year, that this is not some exceptional circumstance that we're having to catch up with, because as you know, coming on board, I mean, these things were left unattended for so long, and even to our surprise last year when we found out about this, the fact that public health itself was not doing these inspections was very bothersome. And so we just hope now that we're on track. I know it's taking time. I mean, we initially, Senator Blas and I know, you know, contrary to the desire of our chair, gave an additional year last year, and we just reached a point that we weren't going to give any more time. I think we pretty much concurred that that opportunity's been given. If we allow an extension, we're just going to see, you know, the can get kicked down the road just a little further. And we just want to see this as a standard operating procedure within the department. So it doesn't become an extraordinary action to have to go back and address compliance. And some will say, well, it's money, it's this, it's that. A lot of it is just not following through and allowing these things to become bigger problems. And I see sometimes the lack of ownership of these facilities that contribute to it, because if you feel like you own it, you take care of it. If you see something wrong, you're going to want to see it taken care of and addressed. And it's just because we've had to do it on such a big scale, it seems a big overwhelming, but you and your crew have chipped away. And we just hope things continue on track. I know it's delayed for some the start of the school year in the physical classroom, and you know, we want to see that learning dynamic return back to the classroom, and hope that in future school years that this just a normal part of the school opening, and it's not something that we have to go over school by school to get status reports on, you know, whether there's a letter grade, whether there's inspection. Did the school pass the inspection? I think we all want to get above that and beyond that so that we can get back to the dynamics of learning in the classroom. But I do want to commend you and your people for addressing and doing what you've done. I realize it's been a long-standing problem, but at some point, that point has come, that we just need to get on the ball and work on it and take care of it and make sure that our kids are in a safe learning environment. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on this section.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Superintendent, could you please proceed with agenda item 2, emergency declaration spending?
Could I have the slide back, please? There we go. Emergency procurement was limited to the supplies and materials that we needed to do the repair work on the schools. So it's important to mention that when we had, if you look at the right-hand column on the slide, those were other procurements that we wanted to use the emergency procurement tool for, because we could access funding more quickly. But the governor's legal team said, no, that's not an emergency. You've known about those things for a long time, so it's no longer emergent. Whereas the consistency of staying with using the materials on an emergency procurement basis so that we could raise the cap on what we can use and how much we can buy at a time, So we issued 4 different purchase orders, and they're all trade-related. So we did carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and cleaning supplies, that we have reloaded those purchase orders 2 or 3 times to get the materials, because with the sort teams, our own folks, along with volunteers, one of the major concerns was to have materials on the ground when they came to do the work. So and this is the tool that we use to access all of that. It's been very successful. I hope we saved some materials from that, because the funding that was behind that is expired. But we still can draw against what we had purchase orders for some months to come, and we will do that. There's continuing, the next slide, please. There's one area that always comes back to talk to us, and that's perimeter fencing and mold mitigation. Site visits for prospective bidders are continuing on the fence project. The bid opening is tentatively planned for November 8th, but we're doing that work in coordination with GSA and our procurement folks. The request for proposal on mold mitigation is being prepared by GSA, and we have a buyer that's working with them directly as well. So this is a question that came up in hearing yesterday. I think was that yesterday? I think it was. And I want to make sure that you know that this is not off track and we're still working it. But going to the next slide to give you an idea of what we have invested. In the blanket purchase orders, right now, the running total is $994,000 in materials that have been put into our campuses. That's what we had to buy. There's been a number of donations beyond that have come from the private sector, from corporations. That, for example, a company donated Butler Tin to do the repair work on the gym at Inarahan Middle School. We didn't have to buy any of that material. It was surplus to their needs. They just gave it to us. So that was very, very helpful. The sort team costs, we're estimating the labor cost that's going to come back to us is about $500,000. We don't know yet because we don't have the invoicing. And our facilities and maintenance personnel overtime charges, most of the crews have been working 7 days a week since March. So this is not something we didn't see coming. We've been after it. So we're about $103,000 so far in overtime. So we're at about $1.3 million that we've invested just in the reinspection. That does not count the invoicing from public health. That's not in this is just what it cost us to do the work. And I think,
Okay.
yep,
So
that's that area. So
thank you.
Open that up for questions.
maybe you can just answer, is the Guam Department of Education able to perform their own procurement?
Perform what?
Your own procurement?
Yes.
Okay, so if you could just maybe explain the guidance from the governor's office and why some of these emergency procurement items were canceled, because I just hear different things. So what's your answer?
The guidance that I was given, as I recall it, as we put these other projects in, was that because those situations existed even for Marwar and before, they were not an emergency any longer. We knew about, their point was, you knew about this, you didn't act, we're not going to use emergency procurement rules to, as they've looked at it, to skirt the process. We didn't see it that way, but it's their rules, so that was the ruling. So we were limited to, we were able to address some of these other things still, but not through that process. So we were limited to the purchases, and it took the cap off our purchase order capacity for the duration of this issue. We're through that now, so we're pretty much done with it. And it worked, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that the rules were lifted by that emergency declaration and gave us the capacity to do the work.
Were any of the contracts rejected because of any, what's the right word, through any fault of DOE, I guess?
Maintenance contracts, or the other ones that are on
Any
the
of
slide?
the rejected contracts?
Let's see, the restroom upgrade.
Were you trying to get, you know, supplies under something for curriculum and instruction?
Okay, the curriculum instruction one, that was a procurement that called for two different things. It called for basically furniture and equipment for classrooms and curriculum materials, and it was put on in a mechanism that the AG's office did not like, and they referenced case law that said recent case law here on Guam where you can't combine those services because it looks like outsourcing. They put that aside and said, no, we're not going to approve it. But with regard, the Southern High School refurbishment would have been in the process of the same ones that Cortec is working on, but there was language issues in one of the 5 areas that had to do in the contract. They rejected that one, and in Arahan Middle School. In Arahan for the electrical, and Southern High School for canopies, because there were inconsistencies in the language and the scope of work that were not acceptable to the Attorney General's office, and we couldn't go back because they were bid with the language that they are. We couldn't go back without rebidding the whole package. So we took those out of the process because we recall we didn't have sufficient funding to do all 40 campuses anyway. So we had to select, and right now I think we are at 13 or 14 campuses that will get refurbished because we didn't have to make any changes to the language. They cleared, in the original procurement that had all been reviewed, all passed by our legal and AG's office. So we were able to just say, okay, we have this much money, let's add these schools.
So were any of these rejections involving ARP funds, and did that throw off the obligation for these funds?
We were able to obligate the funds all of our funds that we had allocated to us, but it made it a little bit of a challenge because of the categories and the rules around that money. But yes, we were able to fund all of that work with ARP money. And it can be drawn down until March of 26. So the contracts are in place, the governor signed off on them all, and that process has begun. Cortec's working on 3 campuses right now, and they will be scaling up to work on all of them.
Right on. So you said that you were able to obligate all of your ARP funds?
That's correct.
Okay. Moving to this slide here, estimated sort team costs, MOAs, $500,000. Can you go into a little more detail? What costs are these?
Bring my finance guy for you.
I'll speak for that, Senators. Wade Paul, the Deputy for Finance and Administrative Services. That's an estimated cost. We have received a bill from, and we appreciated their work. The University of Guam, for example, sent us a bill for their labor at George Washington High School and then one of the elementary schools, and I think they also went down to Inaran Middle School. The bill just for George Washington work was about $37,500.
From UOG?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, based on that, I estimated that ultimately the cost from the other autonomous agencies might rise up to about $500,000. All of them have been provided with a copy of a sample, the MOA that we used with the University of Guam as the basis for ultimately having an MOA agreement and then accompanying that with an invoice. It's purely man-hours.
Okay, so basically we're paying for the sorts help, is that what you're saying?
I don't want to say that because we haven't received.
It's the facts, sir.
But in some instances we may.
Okay, so UOG sent you a bill for helping out at GW, and you said another school. So what other agencies are you anticipating having to pay for their help?
I just know in the SORT discussions we've been asked about these MOAs. Again, nobody has actually provided an invoice, but we sort of gentleman's agreement agreed that they should come and provide assistance and let us know the cost of that assistance.
Okay. So you're anticipating, who else are you anticipating invoices or MOAs from?
The airport. The airport. I think at the very first meeting, SORT meeting, the governor's legal office said that the line departments could not charge us, but the autonomous agencies could.
Okay.
So GPA, GWA, the airport. UOG.
What about, I had heard something about GORA having federal workers that, I don't know if they ever helped or if it was a matter of DOE having to compensate.
They did provide some assistance at Southern that I'm aware of, but they have not sent us a bill. And I was very cautious about GORA because of the federal cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's news to me. I mean, I get it that there are costs that these entities, agencies, autonomous or otherwise, are incurring by assisting us with opening the schools, but it was my understanding that this was just to help. So that's news to me. Line agencies, though, so for example, like DPR, other agencies, are they billing you for their services, or you don't know yet?
I have not received any bills from them.
Okay. No. Okay. Thank you. Senator Blas, did you have any questions?
Thank you very much. The times have changed, you know, when we have to start to figure these costs. I remember decades ago when we started the Adopt a School program, it was adopted by almost every school was adopted by almost every entity, whether it be autonomous or line. And, you know, never once as the creator, the organizer of that program did I ever anticipate, nor would I have accepted any, you know, request for payment from an agency. So I can see the cautiousness in your in your responses, and hope that none of them are watching this you know, this hearing, so that they can come back to us and come back to you and say, oh, by the way. You know, Dr. Swanson, you had mentioned earlier, okay, and it's widely known that many of the schools, to get up and running, you know, wouldn't have been accomplished without the help from not just your PTOs, but from businesses, from the business community, you know, within the district, you know, the jurisdiction or the area of the school, but just in general. Have you been able to capture what those costs were, or how much in as far as, you know, how their contribution from the private sector, whether it be manpower, you know, the materials and supplies and whatnot, that they were able to, for lack of a better term, donate or provide without any expectation of compensation?
No, sir. Most of those organizations were coordinated. A lot of it was coordinated between the school principals and their PTOs and families that had businesses that offered assistance to the school. I would say, I'd like to add in there, Joint Region Marianas. They basically replaced the entire awning at JQ San Miguel, and ought to get some credit for that.
Well, if I can suggest, I don't mean to put extra work on somebody's plate, but if there's a way to be able to capture, you know, these donated costs, if you will, I just don't want to take for granted or feel that the community has been taken for granted for what they've been able to provide, to include, you know, the man hours the extra hours that parents had put in to be able to get their schools ready for their kids. Again, back in the days when we started the Adopt a School program, one of the things that we wanted to show was basically how much were we able to, save if it wasn't for the generosity and the help from the community. I don't think we want to, again, take it for granted. Okay, I know we're in the midst of trying to get things in, and I've seen on many occasions, businesses, come in and use their time and use their equipment to be able to get things up and running, just so they can pass inspection as well. Okay, and it's just so that in case we need them again, they don't say, "Man, yeah, I helped you last year, Carl, and you guys didn't do it, not even a thank you."
Right.
Okay, for something like that.
We can go back and ask the principals.
Appreciate
to
it.
provide the names of.
Yeah. I think it would be for I guess for morale purposes, right. and so that we appreciate what it took for the community to be help the schools get back on track. Okay, you'd be amazed at how much they spent, yes, and how much they saved you.
Right.
Okay, and being able to provide those services. Mold mitigation. That has been a sore subject and something that has been going on for, a year. Almost, yeah. Okay, it almost feels like a decade as opposed to just 375 days a year. 365, but 375. Give it 10 more days. What's the history of that now? I mean, it was on again, then it's off again. It's on again, it's off again. What happened? What's going on?
That's a hard one.
Yeah, kind of figured.
The mold mitigation funding is coming out of the $20 million allocation that the legislature provided a year ago for Marwar.
Oh.
And that was redirected by the governor.
Oh.
So when
$8 million. Was it the $8 million price tag that was?
That's the price tag we're still working with. That's what's in the budget for the solicitation.
So you had that money to begin with. You had the assurances that the money was in the bank, because somebody had to certify that funding was available before you move forward. And then the governor's office took the money away.
That was that. I don't want to go back and touch that mess, but
well, I think we need to touch that mess because again, it's on again, off again, and
it's in that as I testified yesterday. $6 million came out for the National Guard for debris removal from Marwar. The money that's provided for the work that's being done on that mold mitigation contract is $8 million that's earmarked to fund that once it's issued. Then we still have another, the fence project, which is for 29 campuses to replace fencing that's down and missing and destroyed. And I think that's $3 million. And then we have another amount that we're drawing, which will bring us to the last part of that 20 million that we've had transferred back to us for other projects related to this. But
are you going to add to that conversation?
Yeah. So the thing about the mold mitigation was it was at GDOE, went back, and then it went over to GSA. And now GSA says we do not do RFQs or Ps. RFQ, I believe it was. So they were supposed to give it back to GDOE for our buyers to go ahead and process it. But now they had instruction from someone at GSA to do the RFP themselves for the RFQ. That's the last we know of that. So that was the final word we heard, was that GSA is going to go ahead and run with it.
I hate to anticipate what that new cost would be, figuring that we just went through one of the wettest storms in a long time, and I'm sure it's exacerbated, many of those areas that needed mold mitigation to begin with, or didn't need mold mitigation, any type of mold mitigation until now, and how to be able to separate out, what was as a result of your initial assessment, and now how much is it going to cost with your new assessment? And it really disturbed me that, again, a little bird told me that you guys were on track and ready to go with the mold mitigation, then you got the rug pulled out from under you, and had to hold off in being able to do this again. This continues to be a thorn in the side for a lot of places. And, that's why I was looking at this in mold mitigation. Okay, now, what is this, the true story behind this? Okay, because it is kind of concerning. Didn't you have a FEMA project worksheet for mold mitigation for Marmar?
Not a system-wide one. We had some school-by-school claims and work that was done to mitigate mold on campuses, but and then that was connected to other responses to the storm that we have, and that is still in the hopper with FEMA. We don't have any decision on that, but this one procurement has been moved back and forth in Department of Administration. Changes in procurement folks. We have one of our better procurement people partnering with them and basically working side by side to try and get this resolved and get it bid and awarded. But this is probably the most difficult one of them all.
Okay. I'm going backwards here based on your slide. So in the discussions with regards to the canceled emergency procurement items. Is this the emergency declaration that GDOE had set for itself, or is this an emergency declaration that was set as a result of Marwar?
That funding was for the governor's declaration.
The governor's declaration.
Right, and when we put that into the process, that declaration was still in effect.
Okay.
And then when it expired, it got moved to a different priority.
Okay. Any of these canceled emergency procurement items part of any project worksheet with FEMA?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Any of these canceled procurements part of your project worksheet, your projects that you submitted for FEMA for consideration?
Not these.
Okay.
Not these. These are regular maintenance. I mean, some of it I'm sure is related to Marwar, but we were using federal funds to do the work.
Absolutely.
So we can't claim it twice.
Yeah, okay. That's why, when I see the emergency declaration,
right,
I'm just trying to differentiate, delineate between, okay, which emergency? The one that is declared by the governor, the one that's declared by the president?
Well, the governor declared one, and then the board declared the current one, and that's the one we operated with through this process.
Do you have a listing of your current pending FEMA projects?
Yes, we do, and we're going to be in a meeting on Thursday with FEMA and go through that.
Okay.
It's pretty extensive.
Okay, in that extensiveness.
We've had people working this all along.
Have you done some preliminary cost estimates? So that I'm concerned. This is still with the 90-10. Is it? It's
still 90-10. I can't come up with the numbers off the top of my head. It's 800 pages of material, literally 800 pages.
Okay, well, if you can, and if I can, I would appreciate, I'm sure the chairman would appreciate, just to give us some heads up as to what that cost share may be.
Okay.
Okay? That way we can plan as things move along.
And we can provide that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Sidos Masi, Senator Blas. Senator Brown, did you have any questions or comments on emergency or agenda item 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, because you'd mentioned that some of these agencies were, I guess, providing their billings for the services or assistance they provided to the schools. I'm kind of surprised, because historically, we would normally absorb that, and then that was our gift back to the school. I mean, we used to, when I was at the port, provide assistance to the Southern High School before every school year, and there's no billing that was ever issued to the Southern High School or DOE for any of the man hours or any resources that we had available to assist. We simply provided it. So I'm kind of surprised to hear about this back billing. When did this process start?
Senator Brown, I want to be clear. We have not received billings other than from the University of Guam. But at the SORT meetings, there are discussions about us covering the man hours for autonomous agencies.
I'm even more
And
surprised because
they've requested an MOA from us, and the
those
sample MOA we
agencies,
used.
are able to absorb that cost. That's the irony of it. The whole hope was, and historically this has always happened. I mean, since I started in government, where the government agencies literally did come in and provide assistance. I mean, if they didn't have the materials, sometimes DOE was able to provide the materials, but didn't have the man hours or the manpower or the plumbers or whatever the case may be. And those department or agencies that did have that expertise would come in and provide that assistance, but no billing was ever made to the Department of Education. That was sort of our contribution, to assist the department with that need. So this is the first time hearing. I'm kind of bothered by it because these autonomous agencies are more, and I understand, I mean, they can have bond covenants and all those wonderful things. But they're more in a position to provide that support because they are revenue generating. And we kind of looked at it as our contribution to the community to help out because we recognize DOE doesn't always have all the resources or the manpower or the expertise in those areas. And it was a great way to start the school year. That was our contribution back to the community. So I'm surprised. I just have to say I'm surprised. Maybe we should ask those questions when we talk to these autonomous agencies because that's not really a contribution if you're sending somebody a bill, right? And, it's a circumstance under which these schools really needed help and the opportunity to come in and provide that assistance. That's kind of an expectation. So like I said, I'm kind of surprised. I'd send the bill back to them if I were you, unpaid, and put, have them recorded as community service. But thank you for letting us know. I'm just very surprised about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Mr. Paul, so just more information on this because it's a lot of generalities. So you got the bill from UOG, and then what in these discussions led you to believe that you would need to set aside $500,000 to compensate SORT or certain parts of the SORT for helping our kids and opening the schools?
I was asked to provide a memorandum of agreement, which of course initiates the transfer of funds between two government agencies.
Which agencies?
It was a discussion at the SORT meetings that we had to come up with an MOA. Okay.
So they, in the SORT meeting, said, hey, we're going to help, but you got to pay for it. We need to do an MOA. Was that just specifically with UOG, or were you also told to?
It was a general discussion.
Okay.
I was asked to provide a MOA. I was already working with UOG on a draft MOA to cover their labor cost, and so we ultimately took that one and provided it to the SORT team and recommended any agency that wanted to send us a bill finish the MOA or do their own. We'll have our legal look at it and accompany any invoices with that MOA.
So you were advised to prepare for that for the autonomous agencies, but what about the, the GFDs, the customs, the DPRs, the various the line agencies that also assisted at the schools? What kind of conversation did you have about that?
We didn't have any direct one-to-one conversations from any of the departments. It was GURA was seeking an MOA, naturally, since they have federal employees. And there was some discussion about, like GWA, an MOA specifically for the work they provided.
Mr. Superintendent, was this part of the conversation prior to SORT offering their assistance? Did you at any time know that, hey, we're going to, because there's a lot of press releases that came out, that here we are to save the day, but was that part of the conversation that, hey, we got to be
Not initially. That came up in the SORT meetings, and I was not a part of those meetings, but Mr. Paul was. and several of my other team that were in all of those meetings. But we have MOAs, we have one with DPW, we have one with Guam Power, and we use those to operate pretty regularly. So
Right.
it's nothing
So your
that we
MOA
haven't
with
seen
Guam,
before, but I didn't expect that we're going to volunteer to help us pay.
yeah, it is a
But
little.
I also know that agencies are cramped on their budget. It's not just us. And so they're looking where they can make their expenses. I understand that.
So your MOA with GPA, then this has been in existence for, I want to say, a couple of years, where they provide the electrical and the engineering support to the schools. Is this something that you compensate the Guam Power Authority for prior to the sort?
Yes, we had an engineer that was assigned to us for 2 years. We paid his salary and benefits. In fact, we just paid that bill. And then when they provide contractual services, we reimburse them as well.
Okay. I kind of wanted to, Senator Brown had talked about back in the olden days in the Adopt a School program. That program actually never went away. So for the last 6 years, Adopt a School has been in place, and each agency has been assigned to a school. And when this the sort was rolled out, I understand there was a reassignment of different agencies to different schools. I'm assuming just based on the amount of work that had to be done at these schools. But this Adopt a School program never stopped. It's always been in place. And so when we talk about, blaming the legislature for the situation with the schools, I just want to remind the people of Guam that this administration campaigned for 2 elections on fixing the schools, and they've always had the opportunity to help with the schools through the Adopt a School program. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that, and I'm grateful and so thankful for the help, because that's really what GDOE needed. There was a lot of people talking about what did DOE do over the summer? Why didn't they prepare over the summer? And I know, and you know, because we're in here every month of the summer talking about all the work that was being done with the schools, but really the missing component has always been that help from the executive branch and the autonomous agency. So I'm just very grateful for that, but I think, for people watching this, especially for those of us who volunteered at these schools, you know what I mean? We've spent hours water blasting, painting, and at no point did we ever walk out and say, hey, thanks for your help. All right, that'll be $100. You know what I mean? So when we have all these people who are volunteering their time and their energy and their supplies without the thought of being compensated for it, and then we have, government agencies, and I can draw a parallel. I mean, let's talk about when we set up Christmas lights and you have all these different agencies helping out. I'm pretty sure they don't send a bill over to the governor's office for the labor. So I don't know if you maybe send a bill, give them the wrong address or something, but that's just ridiculous. I think that, our children and our schools deserve the help, and I'm just of the opinion that they shouldn't have to pay for it. So we can move on to the next agenda item, which is school aid and one-to-one aid shortages.
Okay, school aids. I'll just review the sides, and Mr. Babauta can answer specific questions on the special education aids. We have 3 different kinds of aids in our schools. So the school aids that you see in the top line are federal and locally funded aids that we figure on a ratio of 150 students. For every 150 students, you get an aid, insofar as you can hire and fund them. The school aids that say paraeducator or SPED are strictly aids that work with students with special needs. Some of them are one-on-one, some of them are classroom aids, but they're funded and intended to be used by that population. And then the school aids, the TAs that are funded federally, are the aids that are there to support the curriculum program for all kids. What happens in our schools is that great classification of school aid is in one sense they're all in one pot. So they have other collateral duties sometimes to help, especially in our larger schools where you have difficult physical supervision of the campus. They're really, especially in middle school, you've got to have a cop on every corner in a middle school, or all kinds of shenanigans going on. I don't care who the children are. That's just middle school. That's what happens. So these are the numbers that we have. and I wanted to go in to the cost part of it. The salary for one of these aides at the entry level is $25,000. The benefits now with the new insurance rates are $19,000. It's almost as much as their salary. That's what total cost. The actual cost to the agency is $45,000 per capita. Those are the level 1 aides that have never worked for us before. The ones that have worked longer, of course, that scale goes up. But I wanted you to see that that particular picture. We're short 3 regular school aides right now and 38 in special education. And I'll ask Mr. Babauta to address the rest of it because I will be speaking out of my depth if I do.
Tom Babauta, I oversee special education. Doc, you did a bang-up job there. You pretty much presented it. I can field questions, though.
Okay. Anything else? Soup? I guess
Not on that topic. That's
okay.
That's pretty much close to the bone as it gets.
Right, yes. So we have a shortage or vacancy of 38 school aides, paraeducators, SPED, and I'm getting a lot, as you know, a lot of concerns about this. And this shortage has, according to a lot of principals and staff I talked to, meant that school aides are getting moved over to cover for SPED, which is meaning we're short in other areas of the schools. So I know that there's, and I want to say there's been a continuous announcement.
There has been a continuous announcement, and we have historically, it's an entry-level position, so we historically will get just round numbers. If we have 50 that are interested, by the time we get to the interview phase, we might be down to 40. And then after the interview, we select as many as we can. And then by the time we get to start date, we're down to 20. So it's not as a desirable position as we would like it to be. We're trying to change that. We're working with Department of Labor right now and GCC. We actually have a boot camp that we'll be rolling out in November, and it's going to be a training / retraining program so that we can entice folks to come in, get trained up, learn about the job, and then pipeline to work from there. So that's one opportunity that we're having, and then we're trying to do launch like a little bit more of a campaign, social positive, campaign, so that we can kind of stir up the energy to see if we can get more folks interested. It takes a special kind of person to work with children with special needs, and even in that group we have so many different categories, and we try to as much as possible to provide training, but it can get overwhelming for many folks. So it's difficult to recruit.
Can you explain why I would hear from people who have applied for these positions, things like, oh, they've been waiting forever for a call back? Just help me reconcile how we could have 38 vacancies, but then I hear from people that they applied and were they just not selected, or what's the?
I can't speak to that. That's a HR function. What I know is when we do a request to fill, the position's open, we make the announcement, folks are notified, they're interviewed, and then selected. So it is a process, and anyone who's worked within GovGuam knows that, from start to finish could be several months. And then we have some folks who, unfortunately, might come back and something doesn't clear from the police side of the house, or, and then we have a lot of people who can't come up with the $25 for, the police clearance and the court clearance and that kind of stuff. So, and we have some people that can't pass the drug test. So, we're trying whatever we can to get the word out, but we also, if you talk to the job market, folks in the job market, there are a lot of people who just aren't interested in working right now for some reason.
What's the compensation for a para-educator?
If you look at the numbers there, it was 25,000.
Okay, so everyone's making the same. Right.
Everyone's making the same.
Okay, so the boot camp that you're going to do at GCC, which actually sounds really good, how do you think that is going to improve recruitment and retention if they're just making the same amount as everyone else?
Well, we're just trying to work with the system to try to figure out ways where we can, get the word out, enhance, look at training and retraining. And so that's just one mechanism that we're using to get the word out. We've done other things where we've done, for instance, while we're doing a fair, we might also do where we open it up and do on-the-spot applications and hiring right there, because all those individuals need is high school, diploma. So, we can do on-the-spot application and interviews. So we're looking at some of these kinds of ideas to, get out to the community and not wait for them to come in to, to our office, right? So I guess it's just the way of the future. We've got to go out there and scratch, below the surface to see if we can grab some people.
What impact does the 38 vacancies have on the delivery of special education?
So technically, every student that is assigned an aide has an educational plan that's built in, and that aide has a specific function in that plan. The way it's designed for most of these students is they're considered a one-to-one or a hip-to-hip. Now, we are for many kids at the beginning, right, you want to give them as much support as possible, and then you want to kind of start weaning off, like almost like a pyramid kind of a case, right, where you give them a lot of support, ease up the support, let them grow, ease up the support some more, because once they hit, post high school, real life, they don't have personal care attendants typically, right? So we're trying to, increase their independence as they go through the system. It's just very difficult where we have many of our students have either extreme behavioral issues or, they just have such unique issues that it causes a lot of concern for parents and the schools about safety. So we're also trying to work with the community. We've had many meetings with parents. We've had many meetings with administrators and looking at this because it is a very complex situation. So we're really trying to figure out how we can revamp this system to meet everybody's needs given the resources that we have.
Are there any applicants who have been interviewed and recommended who have not been able to move forward? Do you check with HR on that?
So we work closely with HR, but again, there's only certain information that they provide to us. So, it's a flow back and forth, but I'm not privy to a lot of that stuff. So I defer to HR on any of those kind of questions. Maybe they could do a timeline as to once somebody submits an application all the way through to, hiring.
I mean, was there ever a conversation where it's like, oh, hey, Catherine, right, at HR? I'm 38, I got 38 vacancies. Who's in the pipeline? How soon are we to getting some people in here?
Oh, I'm hounding her every day, okay. So I know that, and then, so it takes a little bit of time, because when we open the positions and then they have to rate them and, they go through, and it's complicated based on what they share with me, but I know that I get a timely response, at least for the aides.
This vacancy at 38 aides, how is this the most significant number of vacancies that you've had in the past several years?
No, Senator. Sometimes we've started out the year with like 150 short because for one reason or another, people have taken different positions. Just in the last couple months, we've lost 40. So as fast as we can hire folks, we have attrition rate is really, really bad. So we're trying to do things like, really look at those surveys and try to understand from the individual's perspective, what are the reasons that you're leaving? Sometimes it's for better opportunities. Some have young families and, they just are needed at home. But, so we're trying to scrub the information. We have a paraeducator committee, which is comprised of mostly administrators from the schools, elementary, middle, and high. And at any time, any of the administrators can jump in. So we have standing meetings. And then we have a handful of my SPED leadership, and to include myself. So we go in, and it's kind of like a think tank, and we start throwing a lot of different ideas around on how we could address this system. And one of the latest things that we're taking a look at now is like decentralizing the distribution. We've tried many things. So at this point, we're distributing the aides from central office, you know, because we are able to see from our vantage point where all the shortages are and move some people around. Many principals are asking to have more autonomy and control over the hiring at their level. We've tried that before. It can be a nightmare because there's so many different moving parts in so many schools, but that's something that we're in the works and we're having some discussions in the next week or two. So, you know, we're really trying to work with administrators because we know that where the rubber meets the road, you know, it's a daily struggle for them to provide that coverage.
So let's say tomorrow you had 38 people who were cleared, vetted, ready to be hired. Would you be able to hire 38 school aid paraeducators? And what would the funding source be? Would it be federal funds?
So I need to look at the numbers. I know that we have the need for 38. I need to look at the numbers on how many we actually have certified funds for on the federal side. Another thing, if you could put up the slide with the numbers, if you could see for the special ed aides, we have 244 that are federally funded and we have 17 that are locally funded. So one thing that, you know, I guess some people get confused about is, well, if it's a mandate or a special education mandate, then it should be federally funded, and that's not necessarily the case. So if you look, Guam actually receives a lion's share of finances. So there are some states that get, you know, giant states that get just about as much money as Guam, and it's just because they're trying to provide these extra supports. But with the money that's allotted in our grant, we have to provide assurances that all services are out there, all training, all, you know, our entire system needs to be covered. And right now we spend more than half of our grant money on paraeducators. So even our federal partners have cautioned us, either if you're going to continue to go that route, you would have to either seek some local funding or change your, you know, the way you operate so you can maximize the use. There's nothing that says we need to do one-on-one. So we've been spending the last couple years working on adult support, because there are times maybe where you do need one-to-one, but there might be some other times where the student might just need assistance in passing, or so, you know, there might be a case where you can share, right? If it's just in terms of feeding or changing, those kind of things, we can share. Now, if it's instructional time, then they might need, you know, somebody right there. So we've been doing aid audits where we're looking at the IEPs from the team, and we're finding that there's a lot of discrepancies. So we're trying to use that data to drive our decisions and looking at our system. Is paraeducator, special education, is that an actual position title with the Department of Education? It's not an official title within the Department of Education, but it's industry standard for when we're working with special needs kids that we would consider them paraeducators. And then we're also trying to elevate the position to a higher level, and hopefully we could re-examine even the pay scale for that. So it also helps because we have, as you can see, we have 3 levels of school aides, and when we're talking about school aides, we kind of need to be clear about, well, which school aides. So when we say paraeducator, we're clear it's going to be special ed aides. But as far as compensation and term of employment, is there really a difference between the different types of school aides? No, they've done some analysis, and they always say a school aide is a school aide is a school aide. So if that's your title, then, you know, that's going to be the payment scale that you're on. So at one point we were working on a different job series, and we were working on the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and we were working through that, but we weren't able to finish it. It sounds like that's kind of what the issue is, and really the only
difference I see between a school aide, and a paraeducator is really just the funding sources. Most of them are funded, the paraeducators anyway, out of federal funds. But, you know, just from personal experience, I know a lot of these one-to-one aides, and they go through the same thing every year, you know, where they expire, and it's like, I gotta wait to come back. And a lot of times they're willing to deal with that only simply because they love what they do. And, you know, I don't think that's very sustainable. So I know we've talked about this before. If we're going to talk about leveling up paraeducators, then let's do what we got to do to really level that up and then match the compensation. I don't know if you're able to move funds around, federal funds, but I just hear so much about the shortage of aides generally, and then looking at the numbers here, it's clear that a majority of it is in SPED, which again, like I said, and you know, it means that quote unquote regular school aides are covering areas that maybe they didn't even get the proper training.
So I do want to acknowledge though that 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, for like the last 20, these positions were limited term part-time. So they were only working 7 hours a day. They were not getting any benefits. And during the summer or any time a student wasn't at school, they weren't working unless we were doing training. So 2 years ago, we were able to convert the positions to limited time full-time, which allowed them to gain like earn leave, earn sick leave, you know, get all the other benefits. And so that's a stepping stone. We obviously acknowledge that that's not stable enough, and you know, a solid position would be where you get every year you get those increments. And so we're in agreement with that. It's just that walk to get to that point.
Superintendent, what about these community program aides? We were getting calls last week about they were told that their funding was expiring.
They were part of the ARP funding, and their funding did expire. So those positions have ended. They ended yesterday.
So those positions and those
Well,
people's employment has been terminated.
There's no longer funded, that's right.
Okay, so how many of these community program aides are we talking about?
I don't know the number exactly. We didn't have them in all the schools.
And are these, I mean, is it just the title, community program aide? Are they doing school aid type work?
We had encouraged those folks to start to apply for other positions as they came up, and many of them did.
Okay.
But I don't have the exact number.
Do you anticipate any of these community program aides who have lost their employment maybe migrating over to help fill the vacancies that we have with the SPED? Okay.
I'm understanding that they have, several have.
Okay. Senator Blas?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Notice that there are basically two different funding sources for your school aides. With your federal funding sources, is there a cost share to this, or is this 100% federally funded?
There's a cost share match that we get, but we're able to use other agencies as well that are child serving. So we're able to utilize in the formula some of the different agencies provide services, and then what we're able to do is we're able to
offset
match that up and offset it. So
okay.
They've been able to work with us on that.
Okay, so but generally, what is your cost share with your federal cost share for your federal positions?
I'm not exactly sure on that. I can get back to you on that, Senator.
Okay. For many federal programs, what they, I don't want to say require, but what they would like to encourage is a transition. They'll go ahead and fund it, but after a period of time, as the cost share shifts, ultimately it becomes now the responsibility of the grantee. Is that the case with your programs?
No, this is a little bit of a different, our IDEA Part B grant is is a unique grant where it's full of assurances, and they're really trying to make sure that we develop a system that's sustainable, but it's not one that's like a demonstration grant, and after 5 years you have to, localize those positions for sustainability. It's not like that. It's pretty much a year-to-year grant that, as long as there's no major concerns, they're pretty much refunding or funding us again. However, we have been on high risk for, over 10 years. So those are some of the things that come into play when we have our monthly meetings with our project officers. So, but so far we've been good in terms of compliance.
Okay, you're more optimistic of the relationship than I am. Okay, with regard to, when the federal government says, don't worry about it, we got you covered for the next millennia. Yeah. That's not necessarily the case. And so, that said, is what are any contingencies, or have there been any discussions? You said you're high risk status. Has there been ever a discussion as a result of your high risk status that they're going to put the screws, tighten the screws here, or look at how you're administering and whether or not this program is running with fidelity and integrity, that there's no question about it?
We're actually progressing really well, and in the last year they've eased up a lot of the monitoring, so they've been passing over a lot of that internal monitoring to us, and they're recognizing that. So I think we're at the tail end, and they're looking to give back that autonomy to us.
Okay, and yeah, because again, based on your discussion, a school aide is a school aide is a school aide, but on your chart here, you got 3 different types of school aides, and quite honestly, as you go down the list, this aide, this individual has more responsibility. Obviously, a school aide that's in the classroom as for curriculum instruction, has got more responsibility in the daytime than than what you would deem your regular school aide, or for that matter, your paraeducator. I applaud these, these individuals, and I know that you've got, because I've seen them. You've got school aides that can transition and can jump into any role that you put them into, whether it be just to monitor the playground, to be the one-to-one, and then sit there with in this case a 4th grader who's going to need the one-to-one, and understand 4th grade math. Have you ever seen 4th grade math nowadays? Okay, you got to have a college degree to figure that out. Okay, and these guys, and there are some individuals that take on that role, with fidelity and can do that quite well. I just get concerned when I see that you've got more than half of your, for lack of a better term, your workforce as federal employees or federally paid, employees, and whether or not, if this program, if they were to come to you, because they can, all right? You say, guess what? In about 3 years, we're going to phase this out. Or just as quickly as you change the way, the instructions in I get this from teachers. One in particular about having to change out, how they're supposed to now teach in the curriculum in the classrooms. Can't we just let us teach? And so I'm afraid that this may be the occurrence for a year. Okay, so
well, that is a concern. I mean, if that if the rug's pulled out from underneath us, we do have to find the funding for all of those individuals. So we're hoping that never happens, and we're hoping to reduce the reliance on the federal funding for that, so we can maybe spread it around. But more to follow. I mean, we've been spending the last 2 years analyzing it, and I think it's probably going to take us another couple of years, and we'll have a different.
So who controls you know, if you got these 3 different aides, okay, in a campus, who ultimately has the control in that campus, you know, of what that aide's responsibility will be for the day?
It's always the building principal. The building principal then would identify, so for the special education component, most schools will have an identified administrator that oversees special education programs, or in maybe some of the elementary schools, it might be just that administrator themselves. And so they would, you know, they are tasked with all that. So as an example, like at 4 in the morning, most of our administrators are up because they're starting to have to figure out how to provide the coverage, right? People are calling in saying they're sick. People are not coming in, doing all this stuff. So then before the work day, everybody's like, okay, these are the people who have to cover, and this is what's going to happen. And then, you know, then it happens. So it gets a little bit chaotic early in the morning trying to figure out. And that's why it is important to have as much staff on board as possible for safety.
So it's the school administrator, the principal for that matter.
Principal.
Okay, that has that say.
Right.
Okay. Appreciate it.
But you know, with every school, there's a school culture. So every school has delineates, you know, who, and then even amongst the aides, we have team leaders and you know, that kind of thing. So there's a very formal and informal structure on who covers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much. I don't have much to add. I appreciate all the information that's been provided. This is obviously an area we just need to keep tabs on, because obviously the need is there for these students to get the assistance. And I just think we want to put it where, of course, these employees can have some opportunity to grow in their career, so that hopefully you're able to keep them. I mean, if they're able to get their benefits and able to get their increments, you'll have more incentive for them to want to continue to serve and work in the department. And I think until we address that, you're just going to see this continued turnover. And it's unfortunate because you've already had an investment in these individuals, and they know the work, they've experienced it. And I'm sure even for these students who have come to work, you know, be working with them, that there's a comfort level. So it's just something we need to be mindful in the department, that this is an area we can't lose sight of. And I hope that we eventually get this program to where these employees can be able to be regular employees. Perhaps during the off season there might be other assignments that they can be provided, but you know, most people do need a 12-month salary there, you know.
Well, maybe I can clarify. So as of 2 years ago, when we pick them up as full-time, limited term full-time, we keep them for the duration of the 12 months. So what we do is we maximize the time that they're with us with training and getting them, also we have, you know, whether it's extended school year, summer school, so we keep them gainfully employed and just integrate them in. So we've been able to do that, and I think you know, I know it's going to be year to year for now, but you know, ultimately I think the goal would be obviously to get everybody on a regular status.
But do they receive full benefits?
They receive benefits, they can take leave, they get, you know, medical, dental, healthcare, so
do they
that
get
was
increments?
important. They do not get increments because they are only on a year to year.
Okay, so that's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Is how do we take that investment so they actually see this as a career opportunity and something that they can afford to stay committed to? And I guess that's what it comes down to. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Teacher shortages?
As of today, we have 49 that we're short. Those are classroom teachers. So you see them listed in front of you, all the way from Chamorro language down to ROTC instructor, and there are special education teachers listed in that group as well. Those are teachers who teach learning disabled, mild to moderate kinds of folks. Those are spread across the whole district. We're still recruiting for teachers. We will be, at the direction of the board, after we passed our budget resolution last night, working on consolidating student bodies so that we can basically generate surplus teachers that we can move and put into those vacancies that still exist. So we're going to take another look at that, but that's a process that'll go on through the year. But again, we have vacancies announced for all of our classroom level positions, and we're actively recruiting to fill them. And it's this time of year. I'm looking forward to the winter commencement exercises at UOG, and hope that we can pick up some more new teachers there. But that's where we are right now with 49. Last year, it was a higher number. It was over 100.
Soup, can I just ask, in the area of Chamorro teachers, it represents by just a little the largest number of vacancies. Is that tied at all, do you know, to the opening of the Harao Charter School? Did we lose teachers to the Harao?
I'm not aware that we lost teachers to it, but we did lose students to it.
Okay.
And
I think Joe's signaling that we lost a couple.
The difference, as I understand it, and my Chamorro program director's not here, but the difference is in the student loss is it's a bilingual program rather than total immersion, and some of the parents wanted to opt for that. And that particular school at the time that hosts our program, we were in that sharing situation, and they wanted to have their kids full-time in one spot, so understand that.
Okay. Senator Blas, did you have any questions on teacher shortage?
Yeah, recognizing that you've got the teacher shortage, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up the can of worms. How many certified teachers do you have working for Central?
Was it how many certified teachers?
Do you have working at your Central staff?
And we don't have any assigned at Central.
Don't you have instructional coaches? They work out of schools, but they're not in the classroom.
Hi, good evening. Joe Sanchez, Deputy Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. So, as early as a couple of months ago, we've directly assigned them to the schools, and they're no longer at central office. They're at the schools, and they're assigned to a principal when they're assigned to multiple schools. So, the understanding is that when they're at the school and they're with the principal makes the determination of how to use them. So they can cover the class, they can sub, or they can do whatever other assignment the principal provides to them.
How many instructional coaches do you have?
20.
20. Okay. Yeah. Again, I recognize and I understand, the roles that some people take. But when you got to fill your critical needs first, you fill your needs before before you start to take care of your wants. And so.
Understood.
And so that's what I'm looking at. I'm not saying that they're not necessary, but
understood.
Which is more necessary?
Well, the thing is, they're assigned to particular principals. So it's not they're assigned to one principal that can make that determination. So when we met with the principals, the understanding was when they're there with you for that day, they're your responsibility, and that was. I think that's fair because
I think
again,
it's fair, but I don't know that
one principal cannot make that determination for everybody else.
I don't know whether that's being articulated in that fashion, but that's an internal problem.
Because there's a number of things that the schools ask the coaches to do in terms of professional development and training, facilitating with the teachers, particularly the elementary schools who don't have assistant principals. That becomes a big challenge because the principal is doing everything. So the coach ends up coming in there, working with their teachers directly, working with the teachers who are new, all of those pieces. So really, when they're at the particular school site with the principal has the discretion to use them as they need to.
Okay. Are they compensated as educators, or are they compensated?
They're educators, yeah.
So they're compensated as educators?
They're teachers, yes.
Okay. And so there's no delineation, or there's no separation, or now new status?
Well, it's the same thing as school aides, where you have a school aide title and then there's like a function. So counselors are teachers, instructional coaches are teachers, librarians are teachers. So we have a bunch of teachers that have different categories of function, and then but the status is all the same.
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maybe I can clarify because I'm the other section that has teachers at Central. So over the last 2 years, we have, if you look at our footprint, we have 20 teachers less this year than we did 20 years ago because they're out in the classrooms in the schools. So we've been giving them notice that we're looking to shift towards more of a 12-month kind of a position, but because of our grant, there are still things that need to be covered. So we do have some teachers that are providing speech therapy because they are qualified, but they haven't been able to receive the license. We have leisure ed teachers, but again, these are all based on IEP stipulated services. We have OT, PTs, so but we do have some folks that are designated as teachers. So when you're looking at the staffing pattern, it'll say teacher, but they're actually in the schools every day providing supports.
I appreciate it. And, again, they just happened to call me. I don't know why. Okay, and that's bring it up to you guys. Okay, something to do with, I guess, my wife. I don't know.
But can I just maybe end on a positive note? So we've also been working with UOG for the last couple years, and we don't have a bachelor's program in special ed anymore. They do have a master's program, but we were able to launch a program. We initially started with 40 individuals who were interested. We ended up doing some interviews. 12 were selected. 8 of the 12 are selected, but only 8 accepted. And what we're doing is we're doing a cohort where we're going to be running 6 classes over the course of the next year. And at that point, we're also going to be supporting these teachers to, so this is leading towards certification, and we'll be supporting them with the praxis as well. And after that, we will have hopefully 8 new teachers that are going to provide service, pay back in service to teach in the special ed classroom by next year.
Appreciate that. And you brought up something that's interesting. The praxis. I know that's a thorn in a lot of people's sides in as far as having to be able to pass that itself. Is there any discussion with regards to, it's like in the insurance industry that I'm in, all right? Sometimes there are questions that don't have anything to do with the price of Tang at Happy Mart, but we still have to take it because that seems to be a national standard. But, is there a way, is there a process of things that you're trying to do this? I mean, I don't want to say make it easier, but make it more relevant.
We need to be careful. There's guidance from US DOE, Office of Special Education Programs, because we've been in talks, there's nationwide shortages, and we were asking about some creative ways to maybe get more teachers on board. And, from the top down, it's absolutely, that's not a good idea. Don't water down programs. Don't, give less quality just because, of the shortages. So that's,
I don't know if you can consider it watering it down. Quite honestly, I've seen some of those questions in your praxis exams, and I'm like, what does that got to do with Guam? What does that got to do with life in general? Okay, especially in the area of education. I think there are some people that got engineering degrees that won't even pass that test. Okay, so.
So I know that SPED has a different set of regulations too, but for the regular ed teachers, I've taken the praxis, and I think a number of folks are familiar with the praxis. We have a program that supports teachers to get ready for the praxis, but the Guam Commission on Educator Certification has a separate standard operating procedure that I believe they adopted a few months ago, or I think a little over a year ago, that allows a teacher who has taken the praxis more than once and couldn't pass it to take a class, and they have to pass that class in order to I guess, do it in lieu of the passing the praxis. But really, we've looked at it thoroughly, the content. We've discussed it with teachers who have taken the praxis, and I don't want to say it's not hard, but I mean, it's achievable. And I agree with Tom. We're very concerned about giving the impression that this test is too hard for DOE teachers, because we don't believe it is. But being a teacher, we also recognize that there are some folks that are just not good test takers, and that's why the commission has agreed to also have another process in place that allows them to If you don't pass it, I think a certain number of times, you can take a class, and that class can be spread out over, several months, where if they're able to pass that class, which has the same content as what the expectations are, then they can use that grade in lieu of actually passing the practice. I may be, I'm not sharing all the details. I don't know all the details of how that works, but I do know that they do have a process that allows for teachers who have not passed it.
No, and again, I don't want to say that I want to make it, it's not making it easier, but making it relevant, okay? Yeah. I've seen some of the questions that you're going to ask, that are in the practice exam for a person that wants to become a first and second grade teacher.
Right.
Okay? And it really got nothing to do, remember, they went through 4 years of
Well, you have to, yeah. Algebra is required in there, so there is an algebra component, and for teachers who are teaching elementary grades, you can make the argument that they're not going to use it, but, it is what it is, right? It's,
okay.
Yeah, it's there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Brown? You're good? Okay. So, Joe, you had said a couple things. It kind of reminded me of what Thomas said was a school aide is a school aide is a school aide, and you were talking about librarians and all these guidance counselors.
Right.
But if you look at the staffing pattern, they have like specific titles, right? They're a guidance counselor. They're not a teacher.
Yeah.
So our instructional coaches, do they have a position title that says instructional coach? What's their position
So
title?
all of those positions are all teachers, so
Okay.
counselors and everybody are all
And
teachers,
I
and
just-
it's like a parentheses to distinguish
I got you.
who they are.
I think the point that Senator Blas was trying to make, and I agree as well, is if you have, 20 ultra-credentialed teachers
Yep.
doing the instructional coaching, which I totally understand the value of that. I presented
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
resolution.
And
I totally get it, right? But, when I hear about kids sitting in a classroom with a sub, for days, then I just would ask that you be flexible in providing coverage if you can.
Actually, they're more than willing to do so. The problem that we're running into is not that we don't believe that they should do that. It's I call it the Serena issue, where how Serena had her mother, and their godmother, and they didn't agree and whatnot, but they were responsible for that child. In the cases of the instructional coaches, there's not just, I'm their overall supervisor, right? But they report to different principals. So when we said, okay, we're just going to put them back into one particular classroom, then the other principals spoke up and said, hey, that's not fair.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
This is allocated to us. So the agreement that we had with the principals and the instructional coaches is, look, we understand that this is a need. We agree that this is a need. But when you report to that principal on that day, the principal is responsible for whatever it is that you do. Because some principals, strongly believe that, hey, I need the coach to do this because of whatever reason. It's all within the allowable
So
uses.
if I'm a principal of a school and I have an instructional coach, I can say, you know what, hey, man, we got a teacher's out. Can you just go teach that class for today? Or
Not just that, it can be long-term. So for
Okay.
example, if there's one of these vacancies that need to be filled, they can use them until that position's filled.
Okay. Superintendent, agenda item 5, AC update. My favorite.
I do want to make a correction on the slide with the list of teacher shortages. The estimated cost is not $4 billion, it's $4 million.
I was going to say.
Just scratch
That's
the
the typo?
020
Okay,
out.
that's the typo.
Take that $20 off the end, and then we're better.
All right.
It's like, I didn't want to scare you. I did use a number with a B once when we were talking about the cost of rehabbing all of our schools, but that's still way out of the league. Okay, the air conditioning update is broken out by region. The bid packages for 2,588 total, or 1,780 installed, 808 remaining. So they've installed 1,780. They're still working. They've got another until August to complete the contract. We've got some complications with the configuration of some of the units that were specified in the contract, so we're going to have to go out and rebid a piece of it so that we can get them modified and installed. But this is where the contract is still valid. The contractor is still working, And right now, they were just finishing up some of the work at Southern High School. I don't know exactly where they are today. Is Nick still here? Do you have the background on it?
Hi, Senator. So I know they're at Manchinao. The reason why Manchinao is very slow is because they have to penetrate the wall. So they don't want to. It's $350 a hole, but I think it takes 2 days to make one hole in the Hardin building. So currently they installed one 5-ton AC there. They still have a remaining of, I think it's 22 left to install. But they're going to only do it on weekends because it disrupts the kids during their instruction. So right now, currently, we just have to come out with the numbers now, and I want to be transparent, right? That's the main thing we want to be transparent.
Thank you.
So our units that came in, they brought on all package units, and they came in at a voltage of 208 volts. So a lot of our units are split ducted, the split ducted units. A lot of them that are on site now, they're split ducted units, and in order for us to install the package units, we have to convert them. And the conversion consists of electrical, they have to do the ducting, and even some piping. So we did 10% of the original 10% of the original contract, and we got 10%. So the 5-tonners, the 5 tons, 23 out of 26 room in Manchinao, we're going to install with the conversion of the 10% of the original contract. And then over in Tamuning.
So, Mr. Jimmy, what does that entail, conversion?
Conversion means when we went out for the bid, we weren't very specific on the units. So you can't put a package unit into a split ducted unit, right? So
Okay.
we have to convert it at an extra cost.
Okay, so what is the issue with the ductwork? And yeah, I did get confirmation from the principal of Machinana that the crews have been on site drilling and doing the duct work, but I know I had spoke with you offline prior to the hearing, and there's an issue with the duct fabrication. What is the issue?
Well, there's no material in Guam, so they're already ordering the material. But keep in mind, Senator, they can only do 23 5-tons over in the Lago region. They can only convert 13 units in the Luzon region, and they can only convert 10 units in the Cotton region and 14 in the Haza region. So 10% of the original purchase order with the big duct units, the 5-ton that we had to convert over from split ducted to package, that's all we could have done legally, the 10% of the contract. So the remaining units that we have to put out on bid, is, I believe it's 400 units that we have to bid out to convert from split ducted to package.
Okay, so let me just unpack this and correct me if I'm wrong at any point, because I thought you were talking about conversion like with the electrical, but you're actually saying that you have converted part of your contract, 10% of that contract, and instead of getting the
5-ton unit.
yeah, you're converting and basically saying, give us so much of this other kind of aircon, and now you need to go out to bid again for the 400. Okay. So which schools are waiting on the duct work? I know, is Antolon one of those schools?
Antolon? Right now I have a list of Antolon.
Could you email me that?
Yeah, I could
Okay,
do that.
thank you.
I could do that. So right now, like at Stumbo, they're waiting 37 units to be converted. 1M Guerrero 8, DL Paris 12, Wedding Gale 3, Jose Rios, 36, CL Titano, 20, CL Titano Library, 1, Orla Chalampago, 18, George Washington, 3, El Piantalan, 4, Manchinao now 3, Jose Rios, 36, Inarahan, 4, Emiluhan, 8, Marshall Sablan, 20, Harry S. Truman, 6, UP, 30. Southern High School is 15-ton, 1 each. The list goes on, sir.
So what's the timeline on the ductwork for those schools that are waiting for the ductwork to be completed?
Everything packaged everything that they brought in package that they can install, they are going to install it to no extra cost to us. But that's part of the contract. So a lot of the ductwork that we're converting now, especially the 10%, they have to order it from off island and bring it in. But whatever they already converted, like I said, they converted, they already have convergence for Manchinao, and they're already converting on for Tamuning, JQ, and HB Price and Marshall. So they're already starting to make the ductwork.
Okay. So what's the, so the stakeholders of these schools listening, they get an idea, are we talking more than a month?
Yes.
Okay. 2 months?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay.
If the bid goes, are you talking about the one that's in part of the 10%?
Yeah.
2.5 months at most. But they still have until August of next year.
Right.
So, but they're trying their best to proceed and try to get it done as soon as they can.
Yeah, I hear a lot of things. I did get from Ukadu, what is the status of ACs for the lease schools such as ours and timeline of when they will be ordered, purchased, and installed?
Is that for Ukadu?
Yeah.
Ukadu,
And I guess just the lease schools generally?
Yeah, so the Ukadu school was, they didn't have money, the GEF schools. They couldn't do the repairs or the replacement. So the SOUP put Sean Maforte on that to bring him in. Sean, can you come up and
Was that the 5 million, Soup?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Was that part of the 5 million after the typhoon?
No.
Okay.
This is because of the unique arrangement of the 4 lease schools, and those 2. The underlying problem with that gift lease is that the amount of money that goes in for maintenance and repair compared to JFK, that's $2 million a year. This one is $1,700 a year, or 1.7 million a year for all 4 schools combined. So when the storm damage was there, they expended all the money that they have. And because it's a lease to own arrangement, I was able to legally use our money to do that. So Estumbo Middle School was done, and we're working out a similar project for Ukadu High School. And Sean can tell the details of that.
Oh, yeah, it's GAF funding. Okay, so there is 99 air conditions, various tonnages, various split tons. We have the electrical. We did the scope of work already. We've ID'd the funds under GEF funds, but we're just waiting right now to make sure that is the funding source that we're going to use. As soon as it goes in, then it goes into the procurement stage. Once the procurement stage, it's the back and forth between legal and the AG's office. And because it's going to be over $1 million, it has to be read into as it's a contract, even if it's just that we're buying items, even if it's an equipment. Because it's the price, it goes, because Guam Code Annotated GCA 5 says that we have to treat it as it is a contract, which it's really not. It's just equipment, even though we have the 1+5 warranty on it. So after it gets up to the AG, it comes back. We're looking about maybe 3 to 6 months before we can even start, depending. And if we go with how it has been back and forth, we're looking closer to the 6 months part.
6 months, okay. And we're not able to use emergency procurement?
No, we're already good.
Okay.
I mean, even if it goes up, even if if we use the emergency procurement, it's still gonna take long. Because it's still considered, because of the Guam Code annotated, it's still considered a contract because it's over the million.
What type of maintenance arrangement do we have in place? So I know the new ACs have a maintenance arrangement. What about the ones that were installed prior to this agreement?
There is no preventive maintenance on those, but we were trying to come out with a minor, major preventive maintenance contract. We ran that through the emergency procurement. We ran it through the emergency procurement, but what happened was it wasn't considered an emergency. So we have to somehow figure out how we're going to do that contract, because I believe if that contract comes in, whatever's on the ground that is not working, I mean that contract could have probably restored that unit instead of us going out and making bids and trying to get a new one in, right? So we'll never know until we get that contract in place, and then we can go ahead and move forward from there. Yeah, because I've been,
It's interesting. In the last year, about a year ago, I was getting complaints about the 90-degree classrooms, right, due to a lack of ACs. But some of the concerns I'm getting now from teachers and staff is that a lot of these ACs, and I think these are the prior generation, are freezing up. And so I've got concerns about that from Untalan as well as Agata, and actually had a email from a teacher asking who's responsible to clean the filters in the AC units monthly so they don't freeze up and break down, because since the new ones have been installed, no one has come to do regular maintenance to clean filters on these units.
He's got a maintenance agreement.
And I guess those are the new ones, right? And those maintenance would be covered under that?
the one from JMB, there is a maintenance contract in place. Right. And yes, if there is a complaint about them or they put in a repair order to the munis, Charlene had that contacts JMB, and they go out and take care of that issue. But if it's just to clean the filters in the rooms, the teachers can take them down and clean them if they can. You know, that'll help us out a lot. It doesn't take a skilled worker to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to put the onus on them, but if it's just the filters, I'm pretty sure they can clean it. If they need instruction, we can send our guys over there. Like I can go there and show them how to clean the filter if they have to. But as far as just like this, the filter just to be clean, I mean, it is what it is, right? They should take the initiative and clean the filter. If it's anything out of the scope of work where it's going to cost some sort of, where you need skill to do it, then that's where we come in, right?
So there is a 1+4 contract for parts and labor on the air condition.
Is this the newer ones?
This is the new ones. This is for any aircon we even bought, even in the first one. It's a 1.4 for the 1+4 for the parts and maintenance.
What
plus
do you mean?
The factory.
What's that mean? 1+4?
It's for factory in case something goes down. If it's like the condenser units and stuff like that, they're still covered for 1+4 years on it. But the preventative maintenance on the first one they don't have. The second one I think they have one, and then the one for Ustumbo, and the one that when Ukadu goes out, they will have a every 7 month one.
So the one from JMB that they're currently installing, that is a 5-year warranty.
Yeah.
With maintenance, preventive maintenance on it.
Preventative maintenance on those.
I just worry that we got that covered, but then there's a whole bunch of the old ACs, right? How many are we talking about?
There's a bunch of the old ACs.
Yeah, I think we haven't captured like between 500 to 600 ACs that we still have to go out and.
Old ones that don't have any maintenance.
We didn't capture it on this JMB one because we only went after the ones that were down.
Okay. Soup. Sorry, I'm not trying to nitpick, but if you get teachers changing out filters, does that violate the contract with the union?
That's something we'll have to take a look at, but there's certain things you do to keep your classroom straight. You clean up the gecko poop too, you know, I mean.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So it's a minor thing to keep the classroom safe. Now, if the location makes them difficult to get to and dangerous, that's another matter, and so we have to work with principals, but we all use these same kind of air conditioners in our homes. It's not like we've never seen them before. But like you said, if we need some technical advice on how to do it, we can do that. We have the folks to take care of it. And there's also more to these units freezing up. First of all, you're running them at 60 degrees and leaving the doors open. You're pulling moisture in and then you're icing it up. So I mean, we need to look a little deeper and to see what the problem is, and principals can help us with that.
I think it's safe to say across the department, from teachers to, school aides, everybody over the last couple of years, and even prior to that for a long time, has performed above and beyond whatever their job description says. Like I said so many times in here, these school aides and these clerks and even these teachers have become, carpenters, masons, plumbers, painters. Yeah. And, very thankful for it. But I'm telling you, the first time you get a teacher trying to stand on a chair to change an AC filter and they fall, crack their head, I mean, we're in a whole world of trouble. So I don't know if you could just maybe put the word out to the principals, if they get these concerns from the teachers, maybe assist with a stepladder or some staff that could do it.
Well, I'm meeting with all the principals tomorrow and the next day, so we can get that message out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Senator, so there is another way that we do address the air conditions. We put it into Munis, and we do have a small crew that'll go out there, and they're known to clean the air conditions and do it. I mean, we have one guy that works up at GCC. He teaches there. He's with us. He also does it. We have about 5 or 6 HVAC guys that are currently doing the electrical work that always steps up and helps us. But even with the air conditions freezing, we have an SOP that we have to keep the air cons at about 79 degrees. We alternate it. Sometimes they don't. They blast it to 60, 40, and then it freezes. I mean, but sometimes it's hot.
Okay, Senator Blas?
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation about the air cons and the filters. And it just reminded me, several years ago, GDOE procured thousands of air cleaners into the classrooms. Did that contract also say that you have to buy on an annual basis your air filters?
That has a preventative maintenance on the carrier ones.
Okay. How many carrier air filters are you running right now? And how many, you have to buy, weren't you required to have to buy filters for every one of those cleaners?
They just changed them. I mean,
But it was included in your contract.
It is part of the contract for carriers, yes.
Yeah.
For the carrier air filter contract, yes, it is.
So we're paying for something and we've got carrier air filters. How many air filters are you running in your classrooms right now? Because complaints I'm getting from teachers, they don't want them, they're too bulky, they're too loud.
All of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're paying for air filters for units that we're not using.
Well, it's part of the initial contract, yes.
Well, but okay, but again, we're paying for air filters for filters for air filters we're not using. Don't get me started with the Snell fans that was purchased, okay? Where are all those at right now?
The snail fans, in various locations, such as restrooms, closets.
Closets.
Well, we're using them to mitigate some of the public health violations where we don't have the actual fans. We use them to do air circulations.
Okay.
So we have to use the tools that we have to.
You may want to go back and look at some of these contracts, your continuing contracts and stuff, and see whether or not there are clauses. If you're not using it, why are we spending it? I'm just trying to find ways so that you all can basically save some money or redirect some of that money elsewhere.
I can comment. I wasn't in charge of this, but I remember what happened during those deliberations because they all took place during COVID. So the air filters, as Sean noted, was a one-time purchase that included the replacement of those filters because the concern was after a certain amount of time, there would need to be filters. And at the time they were purchased, we didn't know how long COVID was going to last. And there was a demand that we purchase them. It was an option that states had. We made the announcements, and it was asked by everybody. So teachers asked for it, staff asked for it, that, hey, we want these air filters if we were going to go into face-to-face instruction. So by the time they came, eventually, COVID went away, right? So you ended up with air filters and plexiglass and, all these things that were around that now, there doesn't seem to be a need for them, but at the time there was. So we do have these machines. They're really ugly. We were even joking if they can be converted to air cons, because we have more than enough, but they can't, unfortunately. But because it was already purchased, they do change out the filters, but we're not paying anything additional. They're just
but you're changing out the filters for an X number of years, and you're not even using the contraption itself.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that at the time, when that decision was made, they didn't know when COVID was going to end. So, I mean, I'm sure that
Well,
that
there was
the
discussion. I remember the discussion because I was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Okay, which is why.
Yeah.
One of those.
Well, again, it was something
told
that
you so.
Yeah, something that was demanded at the time. The second one regarding the snail fans. Remember that there were so many classrooms that had no air cons at all.
Yeah, you didn't get them for the air cons. You got them so you can circulate the dust in the rooms right after COVID.
Part of that was because the teachers were using fans. They were using their own fans for the same reason. So when you had so many teachers purchasing fans, I guess the logic at the time was, well, until I guess we could purchase those blowers fast. I don't know. You can purchase the blowers faster than you could get the aircon contract up. So when people talked about, hey, do you want us to get these industrial fans or blowers or whatever? The answer was yes, because again, there's so many classrooms that didn't have air conditioning. Teachers were bringing their home fans, and when you bring a home fan to a classroom, it really doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
so at least these Snell fans were strong, and in all fairness, this is what we asked in schools that kind of joked about the blowers. Then we said, then don't use them. We'll take them and we'll give it to a school that wants to use them. But nobody wanted to give them up because they were using them at the time when the classrooms didn't have aircon. But now that they have aircon, they don't need them anymore, presumably. But in the rooms that don't have aircon, they're still using that.
Okay, look into your carrier
thank you.
filter. Okay, there may be a way to be able to move some money to be able to help you out here, because you're not using them anymore. I haven't been to one school and seen an air filter being utilized, because you can hear it before you walk into the school. Okay, so look into that one. Dr. Swanson, you just walked into a lot of this stuff was way before your time.
It's a new thing every day.
That's okay. All right, you got some great guys who know exactly what we're talking about. Okay,
I know, that's
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
why they're here.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Talking about the carrier air filters reminded me of, actually just got a text about the washers and the dryers. Because during COVID, you're right, we didn't know left from right, and we thought, oh, today this is going to work, and then tomorrow, oh, no, never mind that. But the only reason I bring it up is I'm not sure, we're talking about MOAs today. So I was up at DOC in Manilao, and the inmates and detainees, the facility actually doesn't have working washers and dryers. So what ends up happening is these inmates and detainees, they're rinsing their clothes in the shower, and then they're hanging them up over the barbed wire fence. And the warden who was taking me around had commented that, I'm not even sure if it was a case of they don't have the funds or it's out of procurement. So I know you have 41 washers and dryers. I'm not asking for all 41, but maybe let me know how we can facilitate that discussion and maybe get a couple of these that aren't being used over to some people who definitely need them.
So this is another government agency?
Yes.
So we can legally transfer
Correct.
property between agencies. Many of these have been installed ultimately and are being used, but not all of them have. So I'm sure that we could help them out.
Okay, so I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you. And then now, there's nothing else on ACs. We'll go to the
Put it in an MOU.
last item on the agenda, the textbooks.
Survey textbooks. We've cited the three regulatory documents, and I think it's in your folder as well. Department Administration circular, and then the textbook management accountability, it's our board policy 601. And then the SOP 215, which deals with fixed asset management. So when you have stuff that you don't need anymore that's either broken or outdated, you have to survey it and go through a process of documenting that, first of all, to take it off the inventory. And then when it comes to textbooks, the responsibility is to either donate them ultimately, and the priority starts in the documentation about first of all, the students, to other teachers, what's surplus to the system should then be gathered up and offered for donation outside the school system. We have half of our warehouse right now is full of food for the federal food program. The other half is full of pallets of textbooks and instructional materials that range in terms of their condition from very badly worn, torn, and water damage to virtually like new, and still in the box, but from 2001, 2006. Yeah. I don't know the origins of all of that. I don't have a record that goes back that far. This is one of those surprises that I got also. But we're right now working with Dr. Wampat and her connections to find, and we've published the list online to the entities in the outer islands so that they can go through and pick what they want. And my understanding is she is going to be organizing the folks to come in and sort through those and put them in groups to be shipped with Matson, because that's the carrier that's agreed to do this. The sooner they're gone, the better, but it looks like it's going to be 2 or 3 months before they go. And we've at the process that generated those was a little bit of storm damage, but much more cleaning house to inspect schools. And I think some of our principals opened rooms that hadn't been open for a while. Because I was in one school that on a weekend, and a whole bunch of the folks that worked there, the teachers' aides, and even some of the staff, were cleaning out a storeroom and putting in shelving that they had gone to Cost You Less and bought. I mean, nice industrial storage, so that they could get those. And I said, and I see pallets of books, and I said, well, these are things that we are going to use, but we just haven't used them yet, so we're going to put them on these shelves. So there's materials that had been around a while that for some reason were put aside, and then other ones that were damaged. When I first got here, I saw a huge amount of damaged materials outside GW. This was right after Marwar, literally the week after Marwar. And so I knew that was typhoon damage. But we keep going through the process of cleaning our schools out. I can tell you from my own personal experience as a principal, we were going to do an electric refit of our schools, so that means all the classrooms had to be empty. And the teachers had been in their classrooms 25, 28 years. And we put those large industrial dumpsters outside and said, if you have not used these materials in the last 2 years, it doesn't matter what they are, they go in the dumpster. Because it's, even though this was an adoption that was adopted 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and there's something good in there, teachers everywhere, I think I might be able to use that in my class, or I used it before, it was really good, I want to hold on to it. So there's some of that in there too. But we've got, I don't know how many pallets of material, but you've seen it. It's stacked, racked, and shrink wrapped, and ready to go. And
some of it is. So I was at the PD warehouse, and you're right, there are some books, workbooks, other types of instructional materials that are secured in the pallets. They have a problem with the rats over at the warehouse, so there are other supplies that are exposed and otherwise damaged by the elements. And, you know, what kind of prompted, I don't want to say a deep dive into the textbook process and policy with DOE was, I just heard from a bunch of principals, you're right, during the effort to come into compliance with the public health standards. Principals were going in, teachers were going in, they were clearing out their classrooms, rooms that hadn't been open for whatever reason. We got some pictures up here from the different schools of textbooks. So, and you know, there, at least by my count, there are 3 different things that detail how we dispose and deal with old government property. You got the DOA circular, right? And then you have the board policy that deals with textbook management and accountability. And then the law, which is public law 2186. So this public law, and I'm just going to go here, any materials, supplies surveyed by the Department of Education and classified as unsalvageable shall thereafter be disposed of by the principals of the respected schools in which such materials and supplies are stored. Assistance by the department's maintenance personnel might be solicited in this disposition process if necessary. And so I only read this piece because, as you know, it was widely reported in the media that there were textbooks that appeared to be new dumped at, I'm not sure what landfill, I don't even know what school. So do you have any information on the total number of books surveyed that were disposed of in this manner? And is that consistent with all of the different policies that you have to adhere to relative to textbook surveying and disposal, et cetera?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So yeah, we are aware of that claim that there were new textbooks that were disposed of at a landfill, and you know, we've tried to get some additional information, right? So you know, we've asked through a number of folks, you know, to get some details. We have not gotten any evidence. In fact, I've gotten the pictures, the same pictures that you have. I got a picture of a screenshot from Price Elementary School from last year about after the typhoon, and I got a picture of.
I might have taken that picture.
Books at, you know, pictures of textbooks at GW, right? So yeah, that was there. So none of that has any evidence of them being new books that were in the landfill. And to date, we have not gotten any evidence as well, even though we've asked. Right after that,
wasn't this raised though by the board chair? I mean,
what's that?
Was this raised by the board? This concern?
It was raised during a board meeting.
Right.
Yeah, the board chair asked us to look into it because she received reports about pallets and pallets of books
Correct.
that were brand new in a landfill. So
you're saying you don't
the superintendent
have any...
basically said, you better check this out to make sure, and we did that. So yeah, we
well,
also...
Can you just joke, if you could just tell me under what situation or circumstances would that be allowed? And does that...
Not that I know of, where it would be brand new books to be thrown directly into a landfill.
What about books that appeared new? Because, you know, when I toured the PD warehouse, I did see, you know, oh, wow, those look like new books. And I went to go look at them, and they weren't new. They were just never used, never opened. Yeah. Some were from, you know, 2003, 4, whatever.
So we do have that. But under those particular situations, we do ask them to, if they're salvageable, because I'll use an example of English language arts. And, you know, in our, I don't want to call it an investigation, but in our inquiry, we spent a lot of time on this. We actually surveyed the principals, and, you know, basically it all came back that everybody followed the policy, there's no concerns. And so we went back with a second question, where we asked, okay, is there anything that could have been misconstrued as this? Like, was there a misunderstanding or whatever? And then 2 schools self-identified and said, yeah, this is what happened. It might be an issue. One was the GW one, where, you know, it was outside, but those were all certified to be old, you know, not usable, you know, outdated books. The second one was Southern High School, where I actually went down there, talked to the principal, talked to like 12 teachers who were all helping to clean and whatnot. And they explained, well, they did have a book that's now out of adoption that they only used as a supplement with their students. And this, coincidentally, I happen to be familiar with this because when I was a language arts teacher, we did shift from a particular text to another. And I don't know if you remember where before it used to just be the text. So literature was just, you give us the story or you give us the passage, and there's a few questions in the back. Teachers love that because we can use the strategies and make up the questions on our own. And then we adopted a newer version that had too many pictures, too many bells and whistles, too many questions all over the place that nobody liked because it was very, it was just too confusing for students. So a lot of teachers kept the old version and continued to use that. So what ended up happening in this particular school is they didn't like the new book, and they only used it once in a while, and they kind of kept the old version, which is, allowable. They were able to continue to use it in their classroom. So according to the teachers at the school, they moved it to another location. And, I asked them, I said, did anybody dispose of them at this point? Because no, we're thinking of doing that, but right now the instructions were package them or move them or, bring them down to the PD warehouse before you dispose of them.
Yeah, I'm just a little, so I had heard that these books came from Southern High School and that they were relatively new. So,
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know. And when
I
we
talked
talk
to the
about
principal and the teachers, so.
No evidence, like what type of evidence would you need?
At least something that shows that they were in the landfill. Like we even had our safety officer check with our vendor who handles the disposal, the Baliguskas, and he confirmed that there were damaged textbooks, there were books that were moldy, but they could see that they were moldy and damaged and whatnot. So they went to their landfill and those were thrown away. And I believe he even checked the other landfill, and they confirmed that, well, if it was just thrown into a regular dumpster, they probably wouldn't tell because they just pick up the dumpster and it goes into the landfill and gets disposed of. But they don't have any record of any other DOE people coming there asking, because if there's an additional delivery to the landfill, they keep a record of who comes to the landfill and asks to dump certain things. So
I'm not
really.
Before we proceed, are you denying that this happened? Because I know there was a photograph that had been presented to the board.
I think we are denying it. I mean,
So you're saying
we don't have any evidence.
There were no
that-
DOE books in the landfill?
Not new books, no. We haven't seen any pictures.
Not new books, not any books?
Well, if they're moldy or old or disposed of, yeah. Damaged books. We
So did
think
you-
they were supposed to be in the landfill. But in terms of them being new books, we don't have any knowledge of that.
So moldy books,
Damaged books.
classified as unsalvageable, can be disposed of by the principals of the respective schools?
Yeah.
But I
In
guess
fact, not just that they can be disposed of. We instructed them to dispose of them, especially during Baliguskas.
I'm just not sure how to proceed here because I don't want to call into the credibility. I mean, the board chair is a very, it's very upstanding member, and I'm not sure she would put forward allegations.
I'm not questioning that either, but I mean, there's not much we can do if we don't have any evidence. Like
Okay.
nothing. Like
Well,
no pictures, nothing.
This is just, to me, it's, and in asking around with some of the principals, I'm really hoping this doesn't turn into another, and I know you argued this too, another issue with the laptops, because I had heard from some principals that they had books delivered to their schools that they never asked for, never intended to use, and that's where some of these books are coming from. So for me, in my mind, that means that, I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm hoping to see some documents on it, but it could mean that we've been ordering, excess textbooks to the tune of millions and millions of dollars for how many years, and this is the situation that we're in. I get it, that we change curriculum, from DI to don't do DI, and that means that there's gonna be some casualties of textbooks, I guess, for lack of a better term, but just in piecing together everything I hear from just the principals and teachers, I think there's more to this issue. And outside of having more time to kind of look over just any documents or any, procurement of books, is that something that you guys are examining?
Absolutely. But, again, to address the issue about new books being disposed of, again, there's just no evidence of that. And again, we've asked the principals, we've really tried to drill down on what procedures and processes they had. We've even, as part of our readiness, we've discussed it with our facilities folks and the ones who are kind of monitoring what gets disposed of and whatnot. And we just don't have anything that shows new books were disposed of in a landfill or even in any bin. Now, again, if there was a report of that, I mean, it is what it is, right? But there's nothing much that we could do if we don't know what school, we don't know where it's been disposed of, and other than that, I mean, we're looking. I mean, part of the what I meant to the superintendent is I said, you know, we did spend several days on this, but I don't think it was time wasted. It did allow us to talk to the schools. It did allow us to double check to see if people are following the procedures. And, you know, we kind of did something like this in 2017. So we looked back at our records where we said, hey, everybody who has, you know, books that are still salvageable, that, you know, you don't want to dispose of, you know, bring them down to the warehouse. And we actually had, the warehouse was actually behind the headquarters now. And that was open. The whole thing was taken up by textbooks. We stayed open for 2 weeks. We announced it to the community that, you know, hey, we're going to be open from this time to this time. Please come and take a look. We opened it to nonprofit organizations. And, you know, ultimately, there were only a few books that were taken. Everything else was eventually, you know, destroyed or thrown into the landfill, right? So, you know, this is not the first time we did that. So now that we're in this round again, we really did give instructions to the schools to, hey, don't keep anything that you don't want at your school site. Bring them down to either dispose of them if they're damaged. Again, if they're moldy and you can't be used anymore, then dispose of them through Baligaskas.
Do you think anybody at the schools could have taken that as a green light to, hey, just dump it if you're going to dump it? Because, I mean, let's be honest, in the effort
really,
to
it's possible.
come into compliance, right, there's been a lot of equipment moved out and piled up to be dumped.
It's possible. Again, you know, it's if we don't
So
have
you're saying it is possible?
yeah,
Right.
Of course,
Okay.
it is possible. You know,
And then, Joe, the other issue that I had, just concerns from just teachers against staff was, like, for example, when I toured the warehouse and when teachers had talked about a lot of these books moving out, you know, according to the law, and I'll just read this, disposal of surplus books after following the procedure set out in Section 4 of the Act, which says before disposing of any books or materials under this Act, GSA shall first be notified of the surplus nature of such books and materials and shall have 30 days within which to act on such notice. So are you guys following that part of that?
so that's handled by property, but I believe that they made. I don't know if they've discussed it directly, but I know that there's a circular that went out that said that no, they won't take it anyway. So when we gave the instructions to the schools, we kind of left it at that, and all the documentation that was set up was sent down to our property folks.
Is that your understanding of how it should work, though, that after following that procedure and saying, hey, GSA, we want to trash these, we can go ahead and trash them?
Well, I know the notification usually goes to GSA, but I mean, I can't really speak to whether or not they respond.
So
We take it as we can trash it.
It goes on to say, after following a procedure set on Section 4 of the Act, public school principals are authorized to dispose of identified surplus out of adoption books to any of the following parties or agencies, and the superintendent kind of went down this. Public school students, not more than 5 books per student per year, the Guam Public Library, other public schools and Guam's private schools, the Department of Youth Affairs, and then we get down into where former Speaker Judy Wampat and her efforts, I think with the Ajuda Foundation, to get books out to the FSM, Republic of Palau, Republic of Marshall Islands, CNMI. I only ask if this process is followed because as this issue kind of came to light with the possible dumping of textbooks at the landfill, and then I had toured the warehouse. I had started to receive concerns from teachers and other individuals who said, hey, we never got a chance to get these books, or we didn't see these, or, oh my God, we don't care if they're from 2008, we'll take them. You know what I mean? We're not tats-at to take the old books. So have you, to your knowledge, the department has been following these tenets as laid out in the law?
And like I mentioned, we did that back in 2017, 2018. And even principals know that the first step is to let everyone know that, number one, it's not a requirement to dump it. Like, because I know that before there were principals that said, hey, you know, our teachers could have used them. I said, then why didn't you send them down, or why didn't you dispose of them, or whatever? Because, oh, we thought we had to. So several years ago, we clarified with them that, number one, if you're still using them and they're still usable and you want to keep them, you can keep them. There's nothing in the policy or SOP that says you have to dispose of them. Also, there's nothing in the SOP or the policy that says you cannot use out-of-adopted materials. The only thing is the out-of-adopted materials are really just meant to be supplemental to the teachers. So teachers can absolutely keep whatever they want as much as they want. The only thing that we ask is that they use it.
Right, so you said the last time you had kind of made public this issue with the books and the opportunity to get them was 2018. Have you done that?
2018.
2017, 2018, that was a few years ago. Have you since then had another opportunity? Because it kind of, in my mind, the way I'm seeing it is, we cleaned out the schools, it's a bunch of old books, put them on the pallet, wrap them in shrink wrap, oh yeah, dump, you know, so it almost seems like we skipped the whole step in the law that says, hey, make these books available for, you know, those less fortunate, public school kids. So in your opinion, are we skipping those?
So they're still there, so we haven't, but what we didn't want to do is, and you know, we talked about it with the superintendent, it's not in a safe space, so we don't want people walking in and out. You've been there, right? So we don't want people walking in and out, but we just haven't figured that out yet. But we're going to make it available again, but we just didn't want to do it at the warehouse. And
right, but is that something that you believe is done at the school prior to these things being, I mean, and let's be honest, they've been mothballed at that warehouse since, you know, for 20 years, basically. So I'm just trying to hammer down if the opportunity was given to public school students, the Guam Public Library, other public schools and Guam's private schools, DYA, and I now know that former speakers trying to get books out to the FSM. Just because, again, when this issue kind of came to light, I was getting private schools, home schools saying, oh, that's a work, but we could totally use that. And if the law lays out this process and we're not following it, then obviously we're in a situation where we're not following the law, and that's scary territory.
Yeah, so some schools do. I know that they do that. Like, for example, we have one school that just donated a bunch to, I think it's Palau or something. They made arrangements with the military. So the military came, picked it up, and took it over. But I honestly can't say if every school follows that. But definitely, now that they're at Central, we can do that.
What
and that was our intent to do.
The ordering of excess textbooks? Do you have any, does that ever happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How does that happen?
Someone, you know, our count was much larger many years back. So, you know, there was a count of 30,000. So sometimes the counts don't change. So right now we do have an additional number of books that are at every school. And sometimes they're not all the same type. So we have an overage of one particular kind, and under of some others. So yeah, that's definitely something we're currently looking into because we're trying to mitigate those numbers.
Can you give me an example of a scenario where you would have an excess number of books? Only because I'm trying to reconcile in my mind just what some of these principals tell me, like, oh my God, we got 3 pallets of books we didn't order, we didn't want, we didn't plan to use, and now we're taking them over to the dump or the warehouse or whatever.
Okay, so we do have a additional number of English language arts books in the elementary schools that we're trying to reconcile. We're trying to confirm the numbers, and there's different books that you're looking at. Some are consumable, some are not meant to be consumable, and so on. So from what I'm finding out is some of the discrepancy of those numbers are based on what's a consumable, which is the student takes and keeps, and they continue to deliver replacements every year for the next 5 years, right? So it's part of the contract. The others were hard copy books. So you know, when there's a mix-up between the hard copy books and the consumables, you don't need the hard copy books to be replenished. You keep those books. So we're finding out that we have an additional number of hard copy books that a lot of the schools don't need. But there are some schools that are short. So we're trying to make sure that we reconcile that.
I think the concern for me is more like, you know, we have 30,000 students, but we order 60,000 books, and now we're throwing 30,000 books away. And, you know, obviously, money's very hard to come by. You're $47 million short in your budget. And I just keep thinking about the laptops only because when I went to the PD warehouse, I accidentally went to the GSA warehouse first. Because all these warehouses look the same. And so I went to the GSA warehouse. They were surprised to see me. They took me around, and there was one shelf that had a ton of laptops. And I asked the lady, those aren't those GDOE laptops, are they? And she said, Senator, those are the GDOE laptops. So that's why I'm drawing these parallels. And again, I think it goes back to, and I don't know who was at the helm, when or what, or who to blame for the sins of the past, but I think this is definitely something that warrants a closer look.
Yeah, so I doubt if you're referring to the audit that was done on the laptops, I seriously doubt that those laptops that are down there are the laptops from those audits, because the laptops from the audit are talking about the new laptops that were purchased through COVID funding. But there were, remember, as you know, several thousand of other laptops that were outdated from the era years. So the prior to...
I'm familiar with laptops, and these weren't the, the old 5-inch thick ones. These were,
the ones that could stop a bullet.
Right. I mean, I don't know which laptops they were, but I think the point is that, the excess and the waste of the tax dollars. I know you get it. Senator Blas? Senator Brown?
This issue with regards to the textbooks is not a new one. I mean, it's probably 20 plus years ago. I was down at GSA. Very same scenario of boxes and boxes of books that had never been used. And these are the hardback books. I mean, they probably cost $80, $90, probably $100 or more.
Yeah.
They're expensive books. And they were also slated to be destroyed at the time. And that kind of asks why. Oh, well, they update the books and they phase them out, and whatever the reason. Sometimes, we have so much that we just don't put a lot of consideration with regards to what we purchase and what we do with it, because the whole idea that we can order this, nobody's held accountable for it, all this money's been spent, and then we're told these books can no longer be used in the classroom because they've updated the book. And I just think a little more attention, maybe a lot more attention should be put on this issue on how these resources are managed. I certainly give former Speaker Wampat credit. I know she's working with Carlotta Leon Guerrero, former senator, also to see how they can facilitate getting these books out to the islands, because, for them, they don't even have that. That for them is a privilege. And for us, we're discarding it. Sometimes we have too much that we just don't really appreciate what we have, if that $100 or whatever is coming out of my pocket, I'm sure I'd look a lot more carefully at how I address the use of those books. And I think most people don't want to see books like that, particularly books that are still, if they're not brand new, but in fairly good condition, if they could be given out to, the islands or others that may need it, because for them, they appreciate it. I was just talking to Senator Carlotta not too long ago, and she'd shown me a picture out in the islands of young people. I'm estimating their age, maybe 10, 11 years old, and they had received the desk, the student desk in the classroom. And just the way they looked at it, you're thinking, wow, that's a used desk, but for them, that was like, this is really something. Like I said, we take it for granted, And I really hope DOE does a better policy with regards to keeping track of what you're ordering. I understand, students fluctuate. Look at your numbers now. Your numbers of students have dropped significantly. We used to talk about 30,000+ students in DOE, and now we're looking at, 25,000 or less right now? 23,000. Yet the costs continue to go up, and when we see things like this, it's concerning, because there's others within the region that have nowhere near these resources. And when you go to the classrooms in the islands and you see how simple, here we are talking about air conditioning. There's no air conditioning. In some cases, they're lucky if they got a chalkboard and desks for students to sit in. And that hasn't changed a lot in the years I've been out in the islands. It's not like, they got the beautiful new school, unless China or somebody else comes in and builds it. But I just think we need to be mindful of that. I don't think anyone wants to see this type of waste when, if we can't use it, we know there's others out there that need it, and I think would benefit from it. Because I'm sorry, I don't know if history's changed much. Maybe math has changed. I'm going to find out soon, because I've already got my third call. That I have 20 words to learn between now and Friday for the spelling test. So I don't know, but I just think we need to do a better job with this. No one wants to see this kind of excessive waste. And when you have other needs at DOE, when we see this, it just doesn't balance out. Okay, Mr.
So
Chairman,
just to confirm, we do have an inventory, so the principals were very diligent in making sure that there's an inventory of what was actually brought down to the warehouse, and that's been provided to Dr. Wampat to be provided to the other states and territories. The one thing that, I don't want to, it's not a critique of the programs that we have that sends books out there, but the only thing that we asked was that the school system confirm what type of books they need, so that we can kind of separate those, because we do know of situations where they get sent books that they don't need, and then they end up having to throw it away, right?
I
So,
understand, and I
yeah,
think those coordination
we're
efforts.
making sure that they know what type of books
Those
are
coordination
available.
efforts can be made. I mean, the fact that Matson's willing to transport these at no cost, and Dr. Wampat and Senator Carlotta are out facilitating their own time and effort to get these books out there. They're not on the payroll, at least not Senator Carlotta. I know that Dr. Wampat is assisting in education for the administration, but I think it's a godsend,
Absolutely.
the efforts that they're putting forth. So anything we can do to assist them and have these books be reused for children out there that otherwise would not have the opportunity.
To have them.
It's total plus all around,
Absolutely.
right, for everyone. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So just want to see Senator Brown. Soup, there's just two items that I didn't get to put on the agenda obviously I feel obligated to ask you about, but the various threats that have been made against the different schools, what are we doing to avoid a scenario? And I mean, I think you guys pivoted pretty quickly because we did lose some instructional time, and then you instituted what I'm hearing are different types of measures to avoid doing that again. So if you could.
We have put several measures in place until basically we get the all clear from GPD. They've got a second suspect that they're trying to access, and that was earlier this afternoon. I don't know if they've been able to get in contact.
I think they
in
had
contact with the family, but not the
There were a couple
individual.
12-year-olds that were taken into
Right.
custody. Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of our younger kids seem some sort of humor in this kind of operation, not understanding the implication. Those of us who have watched school shootings, been experienced and been around it, and know the horrific outcome that the adults in the world, when you hear those words, that sets a whole bunch of triggers off. But we've put those extra security measures in place, and students are cooperating for the most part. Parents are cooperating, and they've really come down to minimizing what we're carrying on campus. We encourage the clear or net backpack, but we don't require it, and we are going to check them when they come into campus. And then, where we can do it, we also scan, and then set the kids on into the school, and we're getting good support from GPD and also
Sorry,
Park
Superintendent,
Police.
what are you scanning with? Do you have ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't have enough, but we have all of them that were on the island, I think, now. Because I put those measures in place for all the high schools and all the middle schools.
When?
Monday,
Okay. So this was in response to the threats?
yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're making progress on this. We're encouraging people to, basically, it's to see something, say something. I don't know. The interview that the chief and I did on for KUAM, I hope that reached a lot of people.
It did.
But we're going to stay on this, and we're working to have a safe and secure environment for everybody that we can all trust. I hope that the individuals that are responsible are treated accordingly in the courts. I take a real hard view on this, and it's been in some law it's described as a crime, and I tend to pursue it that way. It's a tantamount to, and the old story used to be in a crowded theater yelling fire. We're just not going to do that. And then we're working also in the schools with the teachers, with the kids and the principals, talking about responsible behavior, talking about what the implications are when you do things like this. So we're going back and yes, talking about consequences, but also trying to get a feel for our kids that might be a little bit stressed or troubled, and look for folks who could be a risk. And we also, speaking of risk, we do a risk assessment that was developed here a few years back when you're having a rash of bomb scares. That's turned out to be a very valuable tool. So when it comes out to be a low risk, we'll increase the observation and the strictness of the control, but we're not going to close. Not unless we have a real credible risk. And I've seen that in other in other times in my career was, yeah, we got somebody that we know they have a firearm and we're going to go to a total lockdown situation and get them under control.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're taking that seriously and you've reacted quickly to these threats. I did have just a comment from a parent, and I'm just going to put this out there because I don't know how to deal with it, but they had said that their kids attend Sanchez, and the bag searches have taken so long that the kids haven't been able to go get lunch. They had to go straight to class, and I get it. I get the security measures, but I just wanted to inform you of that.
Okay, well, I've talked with the principals and on site. I haven't been at Simon Sanchez for that part of the change, but generally speaking, they're making sure they eat. And I did see that at Ukadu Monday morning. We had several kids that were late getting in for obvious reasons, and the principal made sure that they were fed. And we want that. We're not going to not feed the kids right. Because of this process.
Okay. So, as you know, the budget process wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be for the Guam Department of Education, and one of the, two of the amendments that we were trying to get through with the appropriations attached to them, one was $1.5 million to the Guam Police Department so that they could provide police presence at our schools, and then the other amendment was $3.7 million for school security, which we were trying to give you the flexibility and the leeway to deal with issues of school security, after hours security, in the way that you see fit. And I don't know what you want to do, if you want to go with monitoring or security guards or those types of things, but we're looking to try and get that in there in the supplemental budget bill. But do you have the means with your current budget to engage with GPD? You got a good relationship with the chief. Is he providing that presence, even though they didn't get the necessary
I want
funding?
to. We have to see how the next round goes, and we can also begin to search other grant sources to be able to fund it, because the chief and I agree on the value. We both want to do it, and I can tell you just the change in tone with having uniformed police officers walking down the hall in the school changes the whole picture. And not that our kids are intentionally doing wrong. It's just like when you're driving down the street and you catch a glimpse in the mirror and it's all of a sudden you check your speed. So it's the same thing. And I watched them interact, the four that were on campus with me Monday morning, interact very positively with kids. And these are not specially trained patrol officers. They're the regular Guam Patrol PD guys that are out on the street every day. But their affect, their demeanor, their interest and engagement with the kids was positive, and that's really the culture that we want to foster.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we wanted to get that in the budget. So those of you guys who like to lobby, make sure you lobby your senators to support that.
I would just hope that everybody pays attention to what the situation has been,
yes,
and the number and effort of law enforcement folks that have helped out. If we can augment that by having folks on campus, at least one, on a regular basis, daily in and out, as part of the school community, that would be a tremendous victory in that regard.
You know, when I was attending high school at George Washington, it was a little bit ago, it was in the late 80s. There was a time when it was during rainy season, they had these people who kept calling in bomb scares. And so they would call in a bomb scare, and then we would have to do the whole drill, which is everybody evacuate the school and go stand out in the big field out there in GW, and then we would get rained on. And so the first time it happened, we all got rained on, and DOE was like, oh, I guess everyone's got to go home because they got caught in the rain. Second time, sent us home. Third time, they sent out a letter, said, hey, everybody bring your umbrellas. Right, and so I just had to, I was thinking about that when I noticed how quickly you were able to pivot with these threats and work together with GPD, so thank you for that. All right, and you know, I'm not saying I'm not going to see you again, because I do obviously still maintain oversight of GDOE, and it's my intention to have you in here a couple more times before we finish out the term. But again, these monthly oversight hearings are part of a mandate that we passed and the governor signed into law that said that we are going to sit down with GDOE every month until every single school has a sanitary permit. And we are now, I know you can't announce officially that Southern High passed, but that's what we're hearing. You now just have 2 schools left to get permitted. So, and you know, judging by the timeline, by the time a month rolls around, every school have been permitted. So again, thank you for your hard work. I know GDOE has worked tremendously to overcome decades of neglect. And you know, when we started this, a lot of people said it was going to take years for us to bring our schools into compliance. So I can't thank the Guam Department of Education enough for the hard work that they've done to bring us to this point. Is there more work to do? Obviously, there's always going to be, but I just wanted to end on that note. So.
Okay, thank you. I just have to be sure to give the credit to the folks behind me and the teams that work for them. Our maintenance guys, literally this weekend will be their first weekend off since March. It's been a huge uphill grind, but it's been a lot of other people in the community that have helped at all different levels, and I can't express our gratitude
You're right about that.
enough for that.
Yeah, and that's just in our, it's in our culture, you know, I mean, people need help, our neighbors need help, you just drop what you're doing and you go help, and you're right, there have been just a ton of volunteers from organizations like PTOs, private businesses have donated time and product to help get us here. Obviously, the governor's school opening readiness team has also contributed greatly to really deliver that final push to get us across the finish line. So, you know, if we're going to sit here and thank every person who's lent a hand, this hearing's going to go on for another 3 hours. So you are appreciated. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to the office on the 2nd floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santa Papa, Nagatnya. You may also send your statements to us at malaffunction@guamlegislature.org. That's MALAFUNKSHUN, malaffunction@guamlegislature.org. Sidus Masi, Superintendent, and your team for your participation. This oversight hearing is hereby adjourned at 8:40. Chamorro Standard Time, Guahusi Senador, Chris Malfunction Barnett, está, adios.